To our City Council meeting this evening. This is June 17th of 2021. Our start time is 7:02. And as customary with our meetings, we have one of our council members kind of conduct for the month. And this particular month, it is Council Member Clint Morris, who will lead us in our prayer and pledge. So, Mr. Morris.
Okay. The audience would please rise and repeat the Pledge of Allegiance after me.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Our Father in heaven, we come before thee this evening, this great city, grateful for the blessings that thou hast given us. We're grateful for the chance to meet as citizens and elected officials and city staff. We're grateful this evening for those who protect our freedoms, for the freedoms we do have, for those first responders, our police and fire and EMS personnel and our dispatchers, all that work to keep us safe. We're grateful for them. We ask that thou would please bless us this evening as we contemplate and discuss the items on our agenda. Please bless us with wisdom. The citizens who are here to give public input, we ask that we will all be civil and have a great discussion and be able to share opinions as we try to move forward again in this great city. Again, we're grateful for the chance to meet, and these things we pray for humbly and do in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. Amen. Thank you. Okay. Typically, we would acknowledge or see if there's any scouts in the audience. And since that's been disbanded, we really haven't had a chance to say welcome. So on the other hand, I'll say welcome everyone that's here tonight, because this is one of our first to have this many people here, and we appreciate that. We'll go ahead and move on then to our municipal announcements. So council, with any of the committees you're on, do you have some announcements there?
Yeah. For all those that are well aware of our fantastic Liberty Days stuff, we're going to give you some more. So Friday, that's July 2nd, there's a movie in the park, and there'll be some other things going on at the pool and at the Ed Kinley Amphitheater. The movie, that's where the movie's at. Saturday is the 3rd. That's the pool party, I apologize. Centennial, that's to celebrate our centennial. So it's discounted admission. It's a good place to dump your kids off and let them go cool off, and you go sit in the shade. Sunday is Voices of Liberty. For those of you that have done that, we choose hometown heroes. And I shouldn't say we choose. There's applications, and we get the hometown heroes, and we present them at the Voices of Liberty concert. Starts at 7 on Sunday. Then Monday is a full day of, you name it, it happens pretty much on the 4th. So you got a parade, you got fire. Now this year with the fireworks, if you don't come, I don't ever want to hear a complaint ever, because these are going to be the most fireworks we've ever done in Layton City. We're combining the centennial. We're combining the last 2 years, well, last year's great fireworks show. Nothing. But, so it's going to be a great show. So if you miss that, that's okay. Other than that, I think we got her.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else have some announcements?
Yeah, Davis Arts Council has some free events as well as some paid events. They have Remember the Titans on Friday at Kinley Amphitheater. You can go there at 7:30. They also have a project at Jupiter at Kinley Amphitheater on Sunday at 7 o'clock for free. And then they have some of paid concerts, Asia on June 23rd. They have Newsies at Kinley Amphitheater on the 25th. And then they have Gentry. I think there's tickets still available for that one on the 28th.
So you can see there's a lot of things going on within our city. So we hope that you guys can get out and enjoy it. And one other item that's going to take place actually this Saturday before Father's Day, which is pretty appropriate. the Sounds of Freedom will have their car show out here in our park. So it will just be a one-day event, and that is this Saturday. So you want to get the dads out to send them on some little timeout, that would be great for them, and you can go shopping. So at the Layton Hills Mall. Okay, I think that does it for our comments. So we'll go ahead and move down to item number 4, which is our citizens comment portion. This portion of the meeting is where any citizen can get up and give us their opinion or recommendations on an item that is not on the agenda. So if you're here with an item that is on our agenda, then it would be wise to wait until that point. Oh, Mr. LT himself. Okay, well, this is the time to open it up. So please state your name and address for the record.
LT Weiss, 1246 East, 425 North. So 20 years ago, because of 9/11, I started underground car shows. And Mayor Steve Curtis, 10 years ago, came to me and said, why don't we hold at the Layton Commons Park? So for the last 10 years, Sounds of Freedom is called Layton City Home. And so I'm here today to thank Layton City for continually helping us. This is a hard show and a hard event. And I just want to personally tell you thank you, and especially Mr. David Price and Parks and Rec for letting me hold this event year after year. And it's not an easy event, but it's a beautiful event. I would also like to invite the council on Saturday. We do the flag ceremony at noon, and we have Hill Air Force Base and everyone speaking what the Sounds of Freedom means to them. And I would open that also to you guys to come on stage at noon when we do the flag ceremony and tell the citizens and the public what Sounds of Freedom means to you guys. But my major reason for being here is just telling you guys thank you. I could never do this without Layton City.
Very good.
So, LT, I think it'd be beneficial to give us a little bit of the schedule and stuff of the show.
Roger. So at 7 a.m., cars pull on. Anyone with a classic car, motorcycle, tractor, anything. It's free to the public. The show starts kicking about 10 o'clock. On normal years, we have 600 plus show cars, dignitaries, but we usually have 8 months to create this show. This year, we created this show literally in 4 weeks. So we're going to see what we have in 4 weeks, but it's a beautiful event. And the reason this show, it's not just a car show, it's a reason to go back, tell our veterans, our first responders, our elected officials, thank you for their service. Because there's a lot of different sounds of freedom besides those jets. And, you know, getting to speak in a public forum like this is a sound of freedom. And so for that, thank you guys. And to all y'all, I would love to see you out there at this show.
So LT, I know every year this is a donation towards
Yes.
something.
Yes.
What have you chosen this year?
So this year it's different things because we had such a quick time. So we have Fort Douglas coming down. They have a committee down there that restores military vehicles. So they're bringing a World War II truck out that they're going to try to raise funds for. We also have, and my mind is slipping, it is a hockey team in Utah. I think it's called Utah Warriors, and it is veterans, police, fire that goes out and plays, and those donations are coming down. And then also Hill Air Force Base. We just spoke this morning to a commander up there. He's going to come down because they're also trying to raise some funds. It's just been really hard to get it organized because literally 6 weeks ago we was denied, and then 4 weeks ago it was like rush, rush, rush.
Okay.
You're not bringing a helicopter.
I am not bringing.
Okay.
No, I am not
Then
bringing a
I'll vote-
helicopter.
then I
Or
vote for
flamethrowers.
it.
Yes. No helicopter this year.
Okay. Well,
Thank
thank
you.
you. And I apologize. I didn't see you sitting back there, so I would have waited. But that's good. Thank you very much. It definitely is it can be a tearjerker at times when you attend. So thank you. Okay. Anyone else wish to make a public comment at this time? Okay. Come up to the, you can go to either side, by the way. And if you want to just, again, state your name and address for the record, and then while you're here.
Yes, my name is Savannah Sentner. We're at 769 East, 900 North in Layton, so just up the street here. I noticed on your agenda that you do have landscaping and fencing listed there. This is a specific issue. Am I able to talk about that right now? Is that okay?
I'm sorry.
Well,
What?
hang on, let me look here.
She's-
You're saying you want to speak regarding the landscaping,
By
but
specific
not the
instance.
ordinance specifically?
Specifically an issue.
Okay, go ahead. Proceed.
So I'm here to discuss the development and construction site of Fairfield Square, which is Homes by Homes. It's a high-density housing project in the making for the last couple of years. I'm here with my husband. We're all in favor for community growth, but the consequences of the poor development and lack of communication has caused a lot of problems. This development has not built a retaining wall, any barrier for water runoff whatsoever, or privacy. In fact, they specifically altered the land to slope into our backyard. My neighbors, my family members, and I have called the city, planning and zoning, Homes by Homes, multiple construction companies listed for the site, and eventually had to call police non-emergency dispatch on numerous occasions. We're trying to figure out the timeline on development requirements to report major flooding, privacy issues, and suspicious behavior going on. The last communication was June 12th, 2021. I left 3 messages for Weston and city zoning and planning. We've talked to Kim on multiple occasions, and we've received no call back as of July 12th when we had a major flood into our backyard from that development. We were stating in our voicemails to them that we just spent $800 on landscaping our backyard, and this flood caused major divots, lots of issues for our landscape that we just barely paid to have done. And we had to, we're a family, we have children. It was not easy for us to come up with that money. So at that time, there was 3 inches of standing water in our yard. The time before that was on 5/21/21. I was told by Weston in planning and zoning that he will make sure to do something and I should call back in 2 weeks. 3 weeks later, the only progress that was done was they laid more sod sloping into our backyard and made a higher degree slope. This has been causing issues for us and our neighbors. We have been given the runaround each time we have called and have been offered no solutions. Our backyard landscaping is damaged, and so we already lost $800, but we're more concerned with our home actually flooding. I spoke with a local land and property law firm just to try to get some more information to see if our concerns are valid. And they said that there are 2 rules out of 3 in the law that apply to us. The reasonable use rule and the civil law rule, which I know nothing about law. So I'm not sure if this is completely accurate or how the rules apply. But because they altered the land unreasonably to have their property massively slope at a high degree towards our home and property, causing more water to run on our property than would naturally occur, reasonable use rule applies. The runoff was foreseeable before the land alterations. We informed them multiple times for the last 6 months that this was going to be an issue and we needed either a barrier wall or a retaining wall, not to mention the privacy wall. So we made them aware of this prior to them doing this. Because they changed the natural flow of the surface water across the land to run into our yard specifically, we're also covered under the civil law rule. We desperately need a solution, even if it's sandbags stacked up against their side of the fence, something we just don't want our house to flood. We're trying to prevent that and cause any further issues. And we would really appreciate any answers or anything that we can do to help this situation.
Okay. Luckily, we've got your address, and I know that we've got our city manager here, and he'll make sure that somebody reaches back out to you, right?
Yeah, can you give me your name and your address?
Yes, Savannah Centner, and it's CENTNER. And my address is 769 East, 900 North in Layton. And when I spoke to Weston, after the 500th call, and I'm sure they're sick of me, they said that there's not a development contract with them. So it's really hard to make changes that need to be changed because he said that there's no contract on file. So forcing them to put up a retaining wall is going to be a little bit more complicated. So I understand that you guys are trying. But if we can get some answers before we have some serious issues, that would be wonderful. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, is there anyone else that wishes to speak on a topic that's not on the agenda? Okay, seeing that there's none, we'll go ahead and move on then to our consent items. And we have 3 items on the consent items, and typically these items we kind of deal with all at once. So we'll have the presentation and then make some motions after that. So the first item up will be presented by Steve Jackson. And it's regarding an interlocal agreement between Layton City and Davis County.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. It's good to be here tonight. Before you, for your consideration, is Resolution 21-29. It authorizes an execution of an interlocal cooperation agreement between Layton City and Davis County for the sugar factory drain line that's located at 2700 West between Gentile and the future West Davis corridor. Currently, the county is responsible for the management of that drainage ditch. It is an open flow system right now. As the construction of 2700 West and Layton Parkway continues, this project has been in the master plan for storm drainage improvements for quite a while, and part of this ditch is going to be piped. Drain line is being piped, and as typical with open ditch systems, once the city pipes those, or whoever pipes those, then the city takes over maintenance and ownership of those. So we've worked with the county closely for years to plan this project and take care of it. The construction is being paid for through impact fees for storm drain work, as well as after the project, the city will own the drain line that's being installed. The county will continue to maintain the open portion of the drain line that will be south of Layton Parkway to the West Davis corridor, as well as a sedimentation basin that's on the south end of the project. And at such time as those are piped, the city will transfer, the county will transfer those to the city at that point. So the staff recommends that council adopt Resolution 21-29, authorizing the mayor to execute the interlocal cooperation agreement between Layton City and Davis County for the sugar factory drain line at 2700 West. So if there's any questions I can answer, I'd be happy to at this time.
Yeah, I just got a couple, Steve. So is that $700 and something thousand, is that part of what we already approved on the construction of 2700 West, or is that in addition to?
No, that is part of the construction of the project.
So it's part of the 6.3 or whatever it was?
Yep, it is part of that.
Okay, and then the second question is talking to some of the users there. They do have irrigation rights out of that water, so we have not seen the design of it. Is the design such that the head gates and stuff will be in so that they can use those water rights that they have?
Yeah, all of the head gates are being put in as similar function systems off of that same ditch for those users that are along that section of the pipe.
So that'll all be accommodated in the line?
Yeah, that's all part of the accommodation in that design project for the 2700 West.
Because they said they'd been informed a little bit on it, but not 100%, so...
Is there somebody specific that we need to talk with? Okay.
You could guess.
Oh, well, I'm just...
And he's also with the Nature Conservancy, so he had some concerns there. And another concern that he had, which was probably further down the road after it goes beyond the parkway, is structures to capture the amount of plastics and trash that comes down that drain.
Yeah, and that will be
in the future.
In the future on that section south of the parkway, where there's the sedimentation pond as well, that we would make that design part of that. So I'll be happy to reach out to Mike with Ryan and make sure that we've communicated all those designs. My understanding was Ryan had been in close contact with him on his particular property, but we'll reach out again.
Yeah, I know him and Ryan have talked a little bit about it, and also the county guy, Adam, I think is his name. So
right.
Yeah, but a reach out would help.
Okay, perfect.
Thank you.
We'll do that. Any other questions I can answer for anybody? Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, we'll move on to item number B. I was thinking D of Mr. Price. So item number B is an approval and agreement with the Davis County School District. So, Mr. Price.
Thank you. This evening, I have the pleasure of introducing Resolution 2131, which authorizes the execution of a master interlocal agreement of joint use facilities between Davis School District and Layton City. The existing master local interagreement between the parties expired in March of 2019. This agreement supersedes or replaces prior agreements entered into by the parties. This agreement does not supersede the existing agreements for our junior high gyms. This longstanding agreement has become a model for other cities to work towards. It has lasted. It's been in place for a long time. I think Mr. Thomas was originally involved in the creation of this agreement, and so that puts us over 20 years.
Hey, whoa, whoa, whoa.
Long time.
Consider 25.
I was not far behind you, sir. And this allows our residents to utilize school facilities for recreational purposes without having to charge for that use. It also allows our school children to be able to use our facilities, again, without having to charge for that use. It is a cooperative agreement that benefits both parties and reduces the burden on our taxpayers. And so we find that this has been one of the most helpful things that we've had in place, and we've worked very hard to protect this agreement and the relationships that support it. So staff recommends the council adopts Resolution 2131, authorizing the execution of a master interlocal agreement for joint use of facilities between Davis School District and Layton City. Any questions?
So I just have one. I had talked to Alex before about the Shoreline Junior High, and it's not included in this one. Is that the reason why we charge the residents to use that facility?
No, the reason that is excluded is we do not have an agreement with the school district for Shoreline Junior High at this time. We've prepared that and turned it over to their attorneys. We just have not received it back.
But you're saying on these that we don't charge our residents to utilize these facilities, but we are charged to use Shoreline. We have to pay to get in to utilize the track and stuff like that. So if an agreement were drafted with Shoreline, would that do the same as with these others, that a resident would no longer have to pay for that?
It not necessarily.
Okay.
That fee, and I think we're $1 an evening, is associated with staffing the facility. Is to provide our staff's ability to be there. And again, that would be something that we could review in the future.
Okay. I just can't quite grasp why there's a difference with these locations versus that one, but that's fine.
Yeah, the Shoreline Junior High Gym is the only one we open for drop-in use. The rest of them are only opened when our programs are fully utilizing the facilities.
So I think the agreements are great. They're great for the school and us. I was just curious, why 2 years later?
Honestly, we didn't recognize that it had expired.
Okay, that's good enough.
Well, I think that speaks to the relationship by both parties as well. I mean, obviously.
Yeah, trust.
Yeah, there's a lot of trust there and collaboration to make sure this program goes smoothly on both sides. But yeah, that's a good point.
I was just curious.
As soon as we recognized that the date had passed, we went to work and turned this around pretty quickly.
Okay. Any other?
It's the smooth. That's the part. It flows. It's so beneficial for both parties. Neither wants to upset the boat any, and I kudos for the two, after Central and then Legacy and now Shoreline. Plus, I mean, I was in on the beginning of it, but it's not anything like it is now. And the usage that we get for all the kids, especially the kids, I'm not overly caring with the adults. They can go places and do whatever they want, but kids can't. And so it's just and everybody from here to St. George is jealous. because we're the only community that has something that big, this big, with them. So kudos.
Any other comments or questions?
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, we'll move on to item number C, and Mr. Chad Wilkinson will present a preliminary plan regarding some townhomes.
Oh, we got to get the screen down, looks like, Tim. The council can see this, but the members of the public can't see that. So I'll go through, and then we'll kind of catch up with the screen here in just a moment. But this is a, as was mentioned, an application for preliminary plan for townhouse developments in the condo townhouse zone. This was rezoned by the council a couple months ago. This is a follow-up to that. This is known as the Alice. It's at approximately 571 South Fort Lane. The code requires that the city council approve these preliminary plats within this zoning district related to townhomes. Just to go briefly through I'll show the map here in just a moment, but just to go briefly through the application, the preliminary plan shows 22 attached townhome units that have a couple of buildings with 5 units and a couple of buildings with 6 units for a total of 22 units again. The property has access from Fort Lane. There's what would be termed as somewhat of a hammerhead access that provides for some turnaround on site. We're just about where the public can see that, and I'll go through those slides real briefly. So this is just a location of that property shown in that red asterisk down there at the south part of the city on 571 South Fort Lane, about an acre and a half, 1.5 acres. This 1.45 acres, excuse me. This is the location outlined in red. Again, this was the recent subject of a zone change that was approved by the council a couple months ago. We're here just tonight to talk about the actual preliminary plat that establishes those units. This is showing the plan of that development. You can see the 2 6-unit buildings and the 2 5-unit buildings that are part of that. 6 units being kind of on the east side, 5 units out towards Fort Lane. Here's that hammerhead turnaround I described. And here's some parking. This will be guest parking for the development. You can see a couple of those pods shown throughout the development to try to distribute that as part of the development. Here's a few of the conceptual elevations. These are preliminary plat elevations, so this is what we would expect to be built there on the site. Give some of the materials there, brick, some fiber cement siding, commonly known as hardy board, but that would be the type of siding they'd have. Again, some other perspective elevations there to give you an idea of what that would look like, both from the street and along those elevations that face the open space and those landscape areas. When I said along the street, I mean that private access drive. I want to be clear about where we're facing there. So your street elevation would be one of these 2 ends. Again, that would be looking at that west elevation of that building. So there is a nice architecturally quality elevation facing the Fort Lane side of the development. Here's a landscape plan showing the layout of the buildings along with the proposed landscaping, generous amount of open space and landscaping proposed to the development. Those front doors of the townhomes will face onto that landscape area on both sides, which will be a really nice design for those residents. That's the end of the presentation. The Planning Commission did review this at their May 25th meeting and have forwarded a recommendation of approval to the City Council. I'll be happy to answer any questions if I can.
Okay, Council, you have any questions? I think most of us recognize this piece of property as the Jay Danzy's home that was recently torn down.
That's right.
So,
yep.
But go ahead.
I just have 2. I know that a landscape buffer was given to this, so I'm going to put a plug in for our proposed landscape ordinance that will prohibit that from happening anymore unless it's a true need. This one was just simply they could have shortened one building or one apartment and not asked for a landscape barrier. But in view of the fact that they've submitted this, and I know it's going to be under the old rule, but since they haven't started construction, is there any way to share with them, if our landscape ordinance passes, the possibility of implementing a little bit more of that into their plan? Because I see a lot of grass in this.
Absolutely. Yeah, we would intend to let them know about the new ordinance and that they can apply that to this development.
Thanks.
What's the what road?
Fort Lane would be on that side of the
as I'm looking at, where would Fort Lane be?
Fort Lane's right there where that arrow is, Dave.
All right there.
Counselor, excuse me. Yes.
Okay. Do we require any fencing or anything?
Along Fort Lane?
Yeah.
There wouldn't be any required fencing along Fort Lane, no.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I'm just, when you put parking in the rear, then that forces any kids to the front. Now, this going the other way makes that a lot more palatable. You know?
Yeah, and we would
Yeah.
expect these would be the front doors, so that front door would face that open space
and
area.
that's fine. I didn't want to see that go out to Fort Lane without some kind of barrier there. That's fine.
Mayor. Are these for lease or for sale? Do you know?
It's a plat, so they'll be available for sale, whether
Okay.
they do
Whether-
that immediately or not.
Well, I'm just there. Okay.
Yep,
Got
yep.
it.
Anyone else have any questions?
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, council, that was our last item regarding our consent items. So I'll take a motion regarding these items.
Yeah, Madam Mayor, I move that we approve Resolution 2129, the interlocal cooperation agreement between Layton City and Davis County for the Sugar Factory drain line at 2700 West. Resolution 2131, the adopt and approve the agreement with Davis School District for joint use of facilities between Davis School District and Layton City, and the preliminary plan for the Alice Townhomes located 571 South Fort Lane as indicated.
Second.
Ken, it's been moved in second. All those in favor of the consent items as presented, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, thank you very much. Passes unanimously. Okay, we'll now move on to our public hearing portion of our meeting. And just so the audience knows, we have the presentation first before we open up the meeting. And what we'll do is we'll deal with each one of these items separately. So each one of them will become their own public hearing. So we'll start out with item A, which Mr. Chad Wilkinson will present that item as well, which is an amendment to our municipal code.
Thank you, Mayor, Council. As was mentioned, this is an amendment to our municipal code. This is a reflection of some recent changes to the noticing requirements in state law. At the last legislative session, the requirement for newspaper notice was removed from state law. So this amendment would make our code consistent with state law. I want to just point out that we still have all the other posting requirements, including the Utah Public Notice website. That's a great resource for people to find out about these public hearings. That particular resource allows people to customize which types of hearings they want to be noticed on, and it's a great way to get that notice. So we have proposed a couple of just minor changes. We're going to take that newspaper notice requirement out in accordance with state law and just put the language in accordance with state law in there to indicate those other requirements, including the posting on the public notice website. We still have the sign requirement that'll still be applicable. We'll still post a sign for all of these public hearings on site, and that'll remain. So this is a fairly straightforward amendment. The Planning Commission did review this at their last meeting, and they are recommending approval of this, and be happy to answer any questions that I can.
Okay. Any questions?
Is it 10 days or 10 business days?
It is 10 days, not 10 business days. Am I correct in that, Gary? That's the state law. Just 10 days, yep.
It used to be 14 on some of these, right? So now it's just 10 days on all of them.
10 days, yep.
Okay.
They can't count that high anymore.
14 was changed some time ago,
Yeah.
and they changed it to 10 days. So,
All right. Any other questions? Okay.
Okay, thank you.
I'll entertain a motion to open the public hearing.
So moved.
Okay. This is a public hearing, and it is now open. So if anyone wished to speak regarding this particular item, you are welcome to come to this podium and state your name and address for the record. And Mr. Crane, there's nothing online? Okay. Okay, see that there's no public comment regarding item number A. I will look for a motion to close the public hearing and take action.
Madam Mayor, I'll make the motion that we close the public hearing and pass ordinance 2115 in regards to the noticing with as described.
There's a second. Okay, it's been moved in second. And being that this is a public hearing, I'm going to go ahead and do a roll call vote on these. So I'll start out with Mr. Thomas,
Aye.
Mr. Morris,
Aye.
Ms. Fitzpatrick,
Aye.
Mr. Boxam,
Aye.
Mr. Day.
Yes.
Okay, therefore it passes unanimously. Thank you. Okay, we'll move on to item number B, which Mr. Tim Watkins is going to present for his last time.
Yes, this is my last evening. It's a pleasure to be with you and work with you. It's been a pleasure to work with Planning Commission, and a lot of individuals have contributed to the draft ordinance that I'll be providing for you an overview form for your consideration this evening. And just for purposes of introducing this to members of our citizens that are here visiting, water-wise landscaping is the focus of this ordinance, and it applies primarily to non-residential uses as well as master plan communities such as planned residential unit developments, condo townhouse developments, multifamily developments, and not necessarily required but recommended for single-family residential that is not part of the aforementioned categories. But this is the type of landscaping, the water-wise landscaping with groupings of drip irrigated plant materials, very minimal lawn and turf, and integration of some mulches, whether rock or bark, park strips that include plantings but are not turf grass, which is where a lot of water is oversprayed onto streets and sidewalks. And the potential savings, as we've learned through our collaboration and supported by Weber Basin Water District, is substantial, particularly the focus on the park strip. So again, these would be encouraged to single-family residents, but not necessarily a requirement as currently drafted. These are some images of how plant materials can mature and sip, as you will, sip on the drip irrigation lines, but not necessarily soak in the sprinkler heads as turf grass would do. Ornamental grasses and perennials. And so these are examples of water-wise landscaping that become required for those types of uses I mentioned and development plans. We explored in the work meeting just a few minor changes and clarifications to the text that's slightly different than what was in your packet. This is just a requirement and a principle that the sprinkler heads or emitters are not to exceed the amount of water required for a particular plant grouping or area. And just cross-referencing between code chapters for consistency. The one requirement that would apply to single-family residential, or a few standards that do apply to single-family residential, is that 50% of the front yard area would have coverage of plant materials. And this could be any combination of shrubs, annuals, plants, ground cover, or turf grass. And then there's a requirement, a minimum of one tree. There is no longer a requirement to put a minimum percentage of turf grass in. So if a homeowner wishes to apply different types of plant materials and go primarily, if not 100% drip irrigation, they have the ability to do that under this ordinance. And then a clarification that the park strip doesn't necessarily require the same planting standards as non-residential or multifamily type developments or master plan communities, but a limitation of 50% of the park strip for the purpose of paving for driveways, walkway approaches, and other similar purposes. And this is just one clarification that this is to apply only when there's, this Clearview standard applies only when there are a curb along a street. So just to share some of the visuals of, let's say for a master plan community, this is where there can be flexibility in lot size and setbacks, which makes more appealing and less burdensome to apply water-wise landscaping in a, say, a 12-foot front yard. And then here are water-wise landscaping plantings applied to the park strip and front yard, as one might see in a proposed planned residential unit development. Street trees could be in the park strip or within 10 feet of the park strip in front yards. And so those are some of the examples and the principles that apply. So staff's recommendation is that the city council adopt this ordinance as recommended unanimously by the Planning Commission, and we're pleased to further discuss and share any particular details or respond to questions and comments. So thank you.
Okay.
So I want to take the opportunity to thank staff for this, also to thank John Perry and Weber Basin Water as well for all the help that they've provided in this. This issue in particular is very important to me. It's something I'm glad to see finally come to be. I've been a believer in this type of watering for about 10 years. And knowing that this just happened to be the good year, I guess, for this to come forward, because I think people now fully understand that there's an issue out there. That being said, I think this is a really good start for us. I mentioned in the work meeting, I want to put it on public record, I think there are two things in particular that we could have gone a little further with. But I am willing to concede to that. But for future reference, that the single-family residential is currently a recommendation, but I would like to see that in the future that's the standard for all new homes going forward. And also there's something called qualified water efficiency landscape experts, and I would like to see that become entertained in the future as well, whether it's part of this or part of the future water conservation that engineering is working on. But I think between what we've got and what could possibly be enhanced a little bit, we are well aware or far ahead of some of other communities around us. But as we continue to grow, this infinite water that we think is out there is not. And we need to be doing everything we can to accommodate our growth in a responsible manner. And this is a huge portion of that, is not wasting our water, watering grass that we do nothing but look at, mow, and weed. And so, again, thank you to staff. You did a great job.
Would anyone else like to comment or have any questions regarding our amendment?
Just clarification for those of the lower IQ on the board here. Detached sidewalk? Is that just another term for a sidewalk?
Well, there are some sidewalks in other cities that are built right next to the curb, which would be an attached sidewalk.
With the park strip.
But our street standards are detached,
okay,
which forms the park strip.
Okay. Yep. I was hoping that was it because I couldn't think of anything else.
Okay, in addition to everyone else that Don had thanked, I think we need to give kudos to our Planning Commission as well, because they spent a lot of time on this. I know they went on field trips and really made sure that they studied all the important issues that we needed to consider regarding this landscape issue. So there's no other comments. I'll look for a motion to open the public hearing.
So moved.
Okay. As I mentioned before, the public hearing is now open. Should anyone wish to make a comment regarding the item number B, which is our landscape ordinance. Again, step up to the mic and state your name and address for the record.
Thank you, Mayor and City Council. It is wonderful to be with you tonight. My name is Ben Hart. My address is 580 South, 1500 West in Layton, Utah. My favorite city across the state. And again, tonight's ordinance is, I think, emblematic of why I love being a Layton City resident. My professional duties give me a chance to interface with governments all across the state, local governments, county governments, and I really believe we have the best of the best here in Layton City. So I just wanted to say thank you to this City Council. We've been waiting for this ordinance. We love this ordinance. I'm going to admit that we did this a long time ago and probably shouldn't have it to stay in code. We've probably been out for a few years, but we're really, really grateful that you took this issue on, that you took a really thoughtful approach, even to the Planning Commission being willing to take field trips, and obviously there was a lot of time and effort put into this. And so I just want to say this is another reason why I love being a Layton City resident. Thank you for being proactive on this issue. Thank you for taking this on and giving us something that we can really work with here in the city of Layton. So thank you.
Ben, we miss you. And I'll tell you that my house that I had is in those pictures. So I was out of compliance for 7 years. So I'm really glad that the people that bought my home will now be in compliance with the ordinance.
Well, I miss you too. I miss the city, working for the city. It's been 9 years, but I sure am proud to be a resident. So thank you.
Thanks, Ben. Okay, any other comment? The Water King.
I was hoping all these people are here for actually the landscaping ordinance, but they weren't. Rick Smith with, actually I'm a water manager, but also I'm a citizen of Layton City, 615 South, 1375 West. There's probably still many sites that'll still be out of compliance even after this ordinance. So again, I applaud you to somewhat legalize water conservation with this ordinance and provide options going forward. Again, wise water use is essential, and again, there needs to be a balance between, again, completely concrete and no landscaping versus actually some balance between some grass and kind of going back to that local scapes, which many of you probably have learned about. I think the key element on any kind of landscaping is really maintenance and upkeep. You can have a very well manicured yard with or without, rocks or grass or whatever it is. So the key element is really taking pride in your yard and keeping it up. So I'll provide you kind of my few comments. I just read through the ordinance and all the different changes and tried to kind of just outline a few things, and I'll hopefully hit on some of those. So on the overall purpose, there's a long list. I almost think it's almost too inclusive, and maybe a little more concise would be a little bit better. Again, one challenge, to reduce the level of carbon dioxide and return pure oxygen back to the air. I'm not sure, landscaping does do that, but I'm not sure if that's really key to our topic here. But one item I talked about was reduce the rate and volume of stormwater runoff and also try to clean up that water. I know that can be a challenge with taking out grass or some other vegetation and still try to clean up your water. So that will be a challenge just based on those purposes of how to do that with more water-wise landscapes. On 19.16.20, on the application side of things, on number 4, the completion requirements, one idea I had just was maybe add a clause that they can delay their landscaping if there's a declared drought or something. Like currently, I know Weaver Basin and others are saying, hey, if you're putting in new landscape, you just wait a little bit longer, or even potentially next year. So you may want to add that as a clause in there that if there is something this drastic or dire, they have that option to not put in their landscaping within a certain time period. On 19.16.036, the plant materials only for non-single family. I know this is what the key element is here, but I think we need to change that title also to add irrigation. On number 2, everything is about irrigation, so it's both plant materials and well as irrigation standards. 1G, the copy I had a typo. Instead of plant materials, it said plat materials. So I assume Don might have picked up on that one. Again, on the 2H, on the same section, the 6 p.m. to 10 a.m. window may not want to be written into that actual ordinance, because there are additional studies right now that are saying that may or may not make a big difference. So I don't know if you want to jump into that yet or not, but you may just want to leave that out. And again, it'll be based on best practices on the watering. I think the key,
Utah State that's conducting that, right?
Yeah, Utah State, but it's funded by a lot of the water districts. So, and there's a link to it I can provide to you on YouTube that has a webinar, an hour session just discussing it. So the key element really is when there's less wind. So let's see, on 0.037, I'll skip over the 1916. I'm glad to see that the new development has an option to, again, do a little bit more water-wise landscaping and change those, and hopefully we can get that public perception to change over time. I said, do these changes make it more universal in the sense that people can retrofit? So are these guidelines or suggestions that we could also retrofit and live within those same boundaries? Again, on 0.038, single-family residential lots. On number 2, it says stop and waste valve inside the home. That's one concern for me. Typically, a stop and waste, there's water that actually leaks out. That's why it's called stop and waste. So you may want to reconsider that inside the home. Typically, there might be a shutoff valve, which is more of a ball valve than a stop and waste, which, again, that's what the purpose is, to drain that line for the winter. On number 3, on that same section, It's highly recommended but not required to have, again, water-wise landscapes for single family, which I understand that. But again, maybe there's some ideas to incentivize people to actually put in water-wise landscapes starting day one instead of thinking about it later. Maybe, again, a different tier or something. Or again, we're just trying to change that public perception that you don't have to have grass everywhere. Because someday I think it will become the norm. So the landscape buffers along arterials and collectors, I know that sometimes a love-hate relationship on sometimes, but I think the biggest thing with those for me is if they're best managed if it's under one person or one umbrella. If you go down Layton Parkway, I think Layton City has a section about 3 different HOAs, 2 different secondary water providers. So again, there can be some challenges that come with that. So again, just that's an idea of potentially if you require that ordinance and you want a certain look down a corridor like Layton Parkway or some major corridors, then maybe the city wants to not only dictate it, but also maintain it long term. On the park strips, on the .070, I think we should, again, allow things in the single family. I don't think plantings should be required in the park strip alone. So one, again, if you require plantings in the park strip, that means another sprinkler line has to go underneath the sidewalk. So that's one tricky thing. Again, different maintenance. I've seen places where, again, even within Layton City right now that have no landscaping, it's just rock, either boulder or some kind of rockscape. And it looks just as good as anything else. So I think that requirement of having vegetation in the park strip is not necessary. Again, going back to that, that's on 2A as well, about 50% vegetation. And also several projects that I've seen on road projects, rock is typically often put back in the park strips instead of vegetation, even within Layton City projects I've seen on Angel Street and some others. The other one was on Church Street in Fairfield I drove past today. On the planting trees in the park strip, that can be a challenge. Now the current standard for secondary water pipes is actually in the park strip, the main lines. So one concern we have on my business side of things that trees and vegetation are planted right on top of our main pipelines. And so not only potential damage, but also how do you go back and maintain it or fix things when there is a leak. Fencing, I didn't really have comments on that one, but the other, again, going back to the landscape buffers on the arterial that.
Hey, Rick.
Sorry.
I don't want to interrupt you, but you've got a heck of a list here.
I'm almost done.
No, what I'm going to recommend is that you forward it on to Mr. Jackson, if you don't mind.
Yeah, I've got a copy here.
That'd be great.
Ken,
okay.
Or Ms. Reed. Sorry about that. On 3D, under the landscaping of arterial and collectors, again, I'd recommend a master service and not have a potential that every single lot that backs up to that RTL have an opportunity to provide sprinklers and try to maintain that little section of that park strip area. Again, a master meter and be able to control the entire corridor is better than potentially having 10 lots that back up to it and have each individual try to maintain as well as provide water service to it. On the clear view requirements, I did read everything. On that, I support 2A.I. The pruning trees up to 7 foot. I highly recommend that. Having walked around my neighborhood and other neighborhoods, half the time I'm leaning over versus actually standing up on the sidewalk. So on that, again, if this does pass, I would encourage that to be not only education back to the homeowners, but also potentially driven by a sense of code enforcement to make sure that that does happen, because it helps all of us that are trying to use the sidewalk. Because oftentimes we just walk in the middle of the side of the road versus actually on the sidewalk because of that situation. Mm-hmm. And again, on section 18, on the amendment to 13.050, does that require all single-family residential will have 2-car garages? Is that my understanding, or is that different? Yes? No?
On new homes.
Okay, on new homes. Okay. Thank you for your time, and I will provide this to Ms. Reed.
Okay, thank you very much.
So I couldn't let Rick have all the fun. So John Perry, 251 South, 1675 East. I'll just take 30 seconds. I appreciate Layton City being proactive in this effort. You know, I was thrilled to be contacted and to reach out and have the dialogue going back and forth. So I look forward to continued dialogue, continuing to refine this process, see where we can improve it in the future, and just carry on the dialogue. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And you guys are a great resource as well for any type of vegetation or water wise or smart timers, any type of rebate program. Weber Basin's pretty good about that. Okay. Anyone else wish to comment on item number B? Okay. Seeing that there's not, I'll look for some action.
I just have a question because I would like to make this motion. So for Mr. Watkins, I think Rick Smith brought up some really valid points. Is there enough of suggestions of what he suggested that maybe we need to postpone this for 2 weeks and relook at a couple of those? They're things I actually had not thought about. Or are they ones that are minor enough that we can deal around? I know the incentive issue we'll deal with water conservation. The stop and valve, like I said, if it has to be inspected, I think that issue is kind of addressed. The time of day issue is something that once I think the research is out from Utah State to say that this is the best practices, we don't limit the time of day, that would be, I would think, an easy change. And then his comment about the delay of landscaping because of the drought. Do we need to include something like that in the ordinance, or is that something that just in the enforcement that if we know we're having a bad year that, staff will just extend the deadline another year? Because I know right now they're asking, please don't install any new landscaping, which is obvious that, a good choice to do. So that's just my kind of question for you. The things he's brought up, do you think we're okay to move forward and it can be adjusted, or do you suggest that maybe I make a motion that we delay for 2 weeks and incorporate maybe some of his suggestions?
Well, I'll share my thoughts and invite Chad to chime in and others. I think if there are some from that list that you collectively feel you might adopt as modifications or with these certain modifications, that's certainly an option this evening. We're happy to continue to study these details and, continue the hearing. I have some thoughts on some of the other comments, but, stormwater in particular, that's more of a urban forestry, street tree benefit, whether they're in the park strip or on the private property. The canopy of the trees does collect rain droplets and reduce the amount of stormwater runoff. So there's some different ideas behind those purpose and intent statements. But Chad, your thoughts?
Yeah, one thought really quick on that particular note is that we do have an option now for those not to be in the park strips. They're either in the park strip or located within a certain distance of that sidewalk. So right now there is an option for a developer to come in and say, I'm not going to put any trees, but they're going to be within a certain distance to provide that canopy effect. We found multiple examples. One notable one that I see on a regular basis is up at the Davis Tech, where they've got street trees planted, not in the park strip, but very close to that, I guess within 10 feet of that sidewalk. And it provides a lot of the same benefits without having the conflicts with the park strip. So that's written into our ordinance because of some of those examples that we've seen. So I think some of those concerns are probably just more of clarifications, maybe a discussion about some of the things we've done. And on the other ones, I guess I would agree with Tim is, some of these items like the hour, some of these are best practices now. If we find through a study conducted by Utah State that best practice changes, that's a quick change. We can come through and say, hey, we're not going to require that anymore. But for now, with the best knowledge that we have available to us right now. So I guess my thoughts are just like Tim, if there are a couple of those you want to request that we add as part of a modification to this ordinance that are fairly straightforward, we'd be happy to take those tonight, make those modifications before we forward it for final adoption. When I say final adoption, that would be the council approving this subject to those things being added, and then the mayor's signature would include that new revised ordinance.
Okay.
So we can modify the modification?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay. Then if that's fine, I'm good with it, as long as it's a living something.
We think, we found, Tim mentioned this in previous meetings, but for those of the public that are here, we found that we're kind of on the the cutting edge here. I mean, we try to be innovative, but we really did, as we looked for examples, we had to go outside of Utah even to, and not just, we used the resources that we had available from Weaver Basin with their model ordinances, but we also looked outside because there wasn't a lot of examples, local examples that we could find of these water-wise ordinances. So what I'm saying is we're probably going to have to make some changes as we go through this.
And the thing that I just suggest, a couple things I heard, make sure if you, I wish I just lost it, but if you're thinking, if it's a drought, we can, it says it has to be in within a year, we can do 2 years. Just say that. Because if they don't see that, the new guy, he says, well, no, it says a year. You know, it doesn't say anything about a drought or anything, whatever you want to call it. But just, you don't have to put a time in there. Just say it can't be extended or whatever.
We didn't address this for single family, but in the case of all those other uses, multifamily, commercial, et cetera, we have in the proposed ordinance the ability for that to be delayed for weather reasons. And I would say drought would fall in that category. I mean, right now, when we adopted it, I guess we were thinking about middle of January type of planting, but I think there is already in the ordinance built in some ability for us to say, hey, it's just not right now.
And that's fine, but as long as it's findable.
Findable?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're going to say it's a year, have something there that lets me know that I can extend it. And I say me as a employee, so he doesn't read it and say, no, you got a year, because he doesn't know.
Yeah.
Am I sounding real stupid?
No. I think it is in there. We didn't go through the ordinance in page by page this time, but we do have some deadline. There's deadlines in there. We would do that by agreement so that there was a clear understanding of when that has to be adopted or installed.
Well, I think in this case, it's a state, because I think the water district and the state is kind of really emphasizing that, hey, delay your landscape for a year because we're in a drought. I think if you identify that in this copy, I think for the most part, we're probably there. But certainly, you know, I mean, council, you can decide if you want to proceed forward or not. So.
I think we should proceed forward, but I think that those modifications should be part of your motion that you make. Because I'd like to see those, at least those two things, the hours and the, just a simple statement of, delay. You know, if it's a problem, you can delay it. But I think it, like you say, Dave, it should be written in there.
Somewhere, somehow, yeah.
And it's simple, just write it, unless there's extenuating circumstances or something, you got that time. Because there is also the need for those deadlines, because you don't want people to move in and then never put the yards in either. So those deadlines need to be there.
I agree.
Okay, then I think I'm ready.
Okay.
I am going to make a motion that we adopt, let me find my notes here, the amendments to the Layton City Municipal Code Title 19, Chapter 1916, Landscaping and Fencing, and Chapter 1913, Design and Development Plan Review for Permitted Uses, Ordinance 21-07, with the addition of the following modifications. More clarity in that no planting of in the park strip is allowed in single family residential. Rick had some questions. It's not clear to us. I think somehow make sure that every place that the residents know that rock in the park strip is okay. You don't have to plant anything else. That maybe the wording on the weather delay include the word drought, because that's not something we typically think of for weather delay, and that the time of day maybe be either changed out or added the words or best practices to that. And that's my motion.
Who would like to second that motion?
I'll second A, B, C, and D.
Just as a point of clarification, you said the plant materials would not be allowed. I think you were meaning to say that they would not be required.
They wouldn't be required.
Okay, thank you.
It's just rock.
Just want to make sure.
Rock is okay.
Yeah,
that's what I'm headed towards. Yeah.
Mayor, did she close the public hearing?
No.
And close the public hearing.
And now I second it.
Okay, the public hearing is now closed. We have a motion and it's been seconded, so I will go ahead and take a roll call vote on this.
Madam Mayor, can you please repeat the motion?
I'm gonna delegate that back to Dawn because she's got the copious notes on it.
Okay. So the motion that I'm making is that we approve the amendments to Layton City Municipal Code Title 19, Chapter 1916, Lansing and Finscaping, Chapter 1913, Design and Development Review under Ordinance 21-07 with the following amendments or clarification that, or they just said it, but that rock only is okay in park strips, that some wording be added to the timing that will indicate that a delay is okay based on drought. So add that specifically under the weather definition. And that on the section where it talks of time of day from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. to maybe list or best practices based on the upcoming studies that are being done.
So there's 3 changes to it. Need a moment to think about it.
And the best practices are defined by the homeowner?
The best practices by the water experts, if you want that word added. I mean, right now it's Utah State that's doing it. It will be, what Weber Basin, what Davis Weber Canal, what Jordan Valley Water Conservancy, what the state of Utah decides, their water.
It's kind of a technical thing. I just don't know if I feel comfortable making a determination. This is the best practice right now, 10 to 6. So I'm not sure why we're adding something in there that is
because it's in the
an
process
eventuality.
of being, it's being
well, when it
reviewed
does,
right
we'll bring
now,
a text amendment back and we can change
Okay.
it. But I'm just not sure why it's in there.
Okay. Well, I will withdraw that one then.
So
But not
you'll
the other
still,
two.
are you okay with her other 2
Well, you don't need to
amendments?
withdraw it because you've already got the motion and seconded, so you need to vote, don't you, Gary? Or
No, she needs to,
If she can withdraw it and the second can withdraw.
she's accepting a friendly amendment,
That's good.
right?
Yeah, you're fine. You're fine to proceed to vote on the motion as it was amended by Tom. What you're going to do
the
is look at
discussion
Tom's
is-
amendment as a substitute motion, or as a substitute to the motion, or excuse me, Zach's.
Yeah, the other Tom.
And yeah,
you may
the other Tom.
you
Sorry,
may gain a vote from him, but you might lose a vote.
everybody was Dave last week, so this is a peculiar. Just remember this as well. On that, whenever there's a weird situation like a drought that occurs, you always have an executive order that you can put in place, and oftentimes that executive order might come from the state, which could preempt that, or it could come from the mayor and yourselves. So what you've got on the table today is you've got a motion which has the 2 things that you talked about, Councilwoman, and missing the other, and that's what you've got before you. And the second says that I can't remember who seconded
Dave
it.
did.
Dave, and he's okay with that. Is that correct, Mr. Thomas?
Yeah, Dave's okay with that.
So you can go ahead and proceed with the vote.
Okay. Then I'm going to call for a roll call vote here. I'll start out with Councilmember Fitzpatrick.
Aye.
Councilmember Morris.
Aye.
Councilmember Day. Thomas. Okay, Councilmember Tom Day.
Yes.
Councilmember Zach Waxham.
Aye.
Okay, there you have it. It passes unanimously. Okay, while we're waiting for the next one to come up, I think since we're on this water topic, I just want to make a small adjustment to our calendar here. And Mr. Jackson, could you come up and quickly, just because we've got a great audience here tonight, I think it would be great for them to hear about the app that we have.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, the water use report app that is now live on the website for any residential water user in the city is available if you log into your water use account or your city account where you pay your utility bills. There is a water use report there that gives you information regarding the average water use that the city is seeing on the indoor side and what you're using on the indoor is comparison, but also the outdoor usage and your need based on the actual temperatures, the evapotranspiration numbers. It's very similar to a program that Weber Basin has for their customers that really can help us conserve the water that we need this year so desperately to conserve, and also to help people understand how much water they're really using outdoors, and as well as how much water needs to be placed on the landscaping. A lot of times we think water or plants need more water than they do, and so this will be a really great tool for everybody. So we're excited that it's out. As the bills come out for this next month, that's available to everybody through those LaytonCity.org app accounts. So.
Okay, so thank you. And once again, I mean, luckily we were thinking ahead of the curve here and had our staff start on that project back in February, actually. So it's now live, and that's a great tool for all of us to kind of use as our own personal benchmark of usage of water. Okay, I'll now go on to item number C, which is a development agreement and a rezone request. And it looks like Mr. Watkins is also going to present that one for us tonight.
Yes. Thank you. And Madam Mayor and council members, for your consideration this evening is actually two rezone request applications or petitions and the development agreement amendment proposal that would apply to two properties. So location is approximately Antelope Drive and 7th West, and more specifically, the property at 649 West Antelope Drive, which is this corner property, existing commercial restaurant use on the property. And this rezone request is from Business Research Park to Planned Neighborhood Commercial, 1.15 acres. And then a separate rezone request for this narrow strip of what's existing BRP proposed to rezone to CP1 or Planned Neighborhood Commercial. And that acreage is 0.74. So a total of 1.89 acres. And I'll describe the use requests associated with the development agreement from these two applications. I do want to mention that the general plan describes the area where you see the Midtown Court townhomes and the Harris Point subdivision, commercial subdivision. The general plan recognizes this area as an urban district, and this is where a variety of services and mixed uses, commercial services for area residents as well as the broader community are recommended in a walkable format, and with the understanding that there should be appropriate setbacks and mitigations or buffering when adjacent to established single-family residential. So that's very much the focus has been the focus of staff's analysis, is to look at those appropriate transitions and to mitigate any potential impact. So with that in mind, here is the view of the proposed site, which would be associated with the north property and the south property. They've worked together as applicants at the request of the city so that this is brought to you together. Two applications considered separately yet combined. And in reference to the development agreement. So on the north property is a proposed hotel. You can see the footprint here, located at least 90 feet away from the property boundary. The existing landscape buffer to remain of 30 feet and the established trees to remain. And then a retail potential restaurant use with a drive-through. This has been amended since the Planning Commission review when there were two drive-throughs proposed through this portion of the property. And then the south corner property proposed to replace the existing restaurant building with a drive-through and sit-down restaurant for a proposed new restaurant use. So the existing BRP proposed area is shown in red to Planned Neighborhood Commercial, and this would be the new zoning as proposed by the two applications. So when considering the hotel use, the development agreement is what actually limits the hotel use. The Business Research Park zoning actually allows a hotel as a conditional use, but is the development agreement that has been modified several times in the past, including a few years ago, 2018, modified to allow for the condo townhouse zoning, which allowed for the Midtown Court development to occur. So this is done through an open public process and Planning Commission review and City Council review. The applicant learned about some potential impacts and concerns expressed at the hearing and agreed to add and propose to the development agreement some limitations, that there should not be any uplighting applied to the east side of the hotel. The east side of the hotel should not provide balconies or operable windows. Any outdoor amenity areas for guests would be limited to the west side of the hotel, and the hotel would be limited to a maximum height of 4 stories. Just want to share in the existing development agreement that commercial development is anticipated and entitled. This is a drawing from the original development agreement showing the potential for office and retail uses. The height of this would be limited, or is currently limited, to 35 feet, which is about the height of the Midtown Court townhomes, approximately. And that would be for the first 150 feet from that east property boundary. I'm actually going to flip this so as if we're facing north, this would be the property boundary, again, in the existing development agreement exhibit. And so 60 feet would be no building, and that's where the 30-foot landscape buffer and potential parking could be located. And then for 150 feet, a maximum of 35 feet. And then after that point, there could be up to 100 feet after that 150-foot setback. So in the amended development agreement, this is an updated exhibit that would add 15 feet between a setback of 90 feet and 150 feet. This is really the only difference, is to add 15 feet, maximum 4 stories, which is consistent with the view angle or sight line from the single-family residential. And in the development agreement, I suppose if the applicant agreed to, there could be removal of this 100-foot maximum building height as a limitation. So that's something that could be considered as a modification, because that particular height is not proposed for the development plan. But this additional up to 15 feet high is proposed in this segment. Here's a little more detail added to the sight line. We call it the sight line from the residential. Again, filtered and buffered, if not screened by a very substantial mature landscape buffer in that 30 feet, some additional trees along the parking corridor. And you see that consistency of the sight line. And again, the entitlement for this building area is highlighted in yellow. So I'll just point out a couple of additional mitigations that the team of applicants has proposed. I mentioned the one drive-through and a consolidated building that could have one or more businesses located in that square footage, but one consolidated drive-through. And this area over here was looked at in the Planning Commission meeting as trash receptacles. Applicant team heard some concerns about potential noise and sound impacts associated with the trash pickup. The proposal is to add a masonry wall to the back of the trash receptacles, and that masonry wall continue and be part of an accessory structure for indoor storage of items, and that wall could continue up to 10 feet high at a length that would help to further buffer those sound impacts for really these residents here. So there'd be potential for 2 masonry walls, the landscaping in between, and in an effort to substantially reduce sound impacts. Also from vehicles circulating through the proposed drive-through. So I also wanted to clarify that a drive-through restaurant is allowed in the planned neighborhood commercial zone, the CP1. The development agreement only restricted specifically a drive-through in this one building. So it's really, and in fact, this little strip of, per the North Property applicant's adjusted retail footprint, there really is not necessarily a need for this CP1 zoning. And it's more just the development agreement proposal to allow for a hotel as shown and specific to the limitations that are proposed. So with that, I think be happy to respond to any questions and have some discussion.
Thanks, Tim.
And I apologize. The Planning Commission unanimously recommended approval with the understanding or the recommendation that the garbage trash disposal area be either relocated or further mitigated. Thank you.
Why was the hotel specifically prohibited from the current development agreement?
I don't have the history of that. I just have the list of uses that was allowed. Whether or not additional specific mitigations and limitations of a hotel use to make it more compatible were explored when the development agreement was originally established, I don't know. But at least that opportunity exists today.
So a hotel was allowed under that current zoning, but the development agreement, when it was originally enacted, specifically prohibited a hotel.
That's correct.
And so what do you think has changed maybe in this area that would allow for such a modification?
So in part, the general plan recommendation and understanding of this area as urban district is something that has changed since that time. I think the further establishment of commercial uses in the Harris Point subdivision, and I think also our increased understanding of landscape buffers, as well as specific design limitations, treating the east side separate from the west side. So that's why I think in part what the applicant team has asked to be considered as some changing conditions and new opportunities to consider.
So we have two applicants. I guess since we may not need that CP1 like on that side because they might not need the second drive-through, are these two projects severable from each other? Are they reliant on one another? Is the hotel goes away and Raising Cane's isn't staying, Raising Cane's goes away, hotel's not staying? Can you sever them or are they combined?
Yes, they can be separated and approved individually. And the development agreement would be modified or amended only to the one or two requests.
That's it for right now.
Okay. Next.
So I just want clarification on the motions. So the first motion is the resolution to amend the development agreement. So it kind of goes back to what Councilmember Bloxham said. Does that motion include both of these items or just the modification to allow a hotel to the development agreement? So I'm not really clear on what does, which goes with what?
Sure. So the resolution to approve the development agreement includes three alternatives. One being to approve it as drafted, as amended. Second, to approve it with modifications, which could mean only one proposal or the other on north or south, or other modifications that you might determine this evening. And then third, alternatives to deny the amendment.
So it does include both items, like he asked.
Yes,
so,
and it includes both or one or the other.
Okay, and then 2116, Ordinance 2116, is that the proposed where Cane's is going to go?
I believe so.
And then the third motion, 2117, is the BRP to CP1 for the hotel. Or if that line goes away, the third motion's not necessarily needed then?
It's not.
Trying to confuse us, so.
Only the development agreement amendment for the north
affects the hotel.
Yep.
And then the CP1 zone is the 116 for Cane's, and the development agreement applies to both, but we can modify one way or the other. It's accepted, whatever. Okay, just want to make sure I'm clear on that.
Okay, Council, do you have additional questions regarding the proposal here?
Can I ask Gary? Do you know why they would have been prohibited if it was an allowable use back? I mean, previous general plan, rules. I just am kind of curious why it was specifically prohibited in that specific area. It seems bizarre if it's allowed. If it's typically an allowable use.
Well, you're asking me to think back a long time.
You were here before me.
I don't remember what I had for lunch today. So, but as my recollection, one of the major concerns that they had, that the residents had, was the height. And I think the supposition was that a hotel could go to 100 feet. and that would be an awfully tall building. And nobody wanted a 100-foot building beside their home. And so the height in the BRP zone was one of the major concerns about anything that they put along that home line right there. Since that time, they actually implemented a larger, taller wall, and that has worked fairly well. And then also they've implemented landscaping, which is now mature. And so those are two things that have changed since those original days, when they were looking at just vacant land and, what are we going to put there and what's it going to be like living right next to that. And so those are the things that I remember. The other thing was there was a drive to put some type of research business park type use in there, which should be, relatively low activity, that type of thing, lower activity than the CP1 would have had. Hotels, pretty much the reason they're in the BRP is that their activity is probably as low as most of the BRP uses, just simply because if you sit there and watch a hotel during the day, you might have a certain time period when you have, an increase in traffic and that type of thing. But normally throughout the day, rarely do you have, very many, certainly not anywhere near what you have in a CP zone. So those are the reasons that I remember. And, anyone that was there during that period of time may remember others. So.
Okay. Any other clarification before we open our public hearing? I'll look for a motion to open the public hearing.
Motion to open the public hearing.
Thank you. Okay, the public hearing is now open, and which is a time where we'll accept citizens' comments. And I just want to set forth a couple of recommendations here, just so you know, and kind of some decorum. I mean, typically in a public setting, we don't approve of applauding or booing or anything of those nature. So even though you may agree with what's been said, just kind of understand that that's probably not acceptable at this point. And certainly, I know that we've received several emails on this, which was great. And if you've got a spokesperson that's representing several of you, then certainly by all means, I'm going to allow you to speak and kind of go through it. But and should he not cover a topic that you're interested in, you're welcome to come up and continue. So I just want to let you guys know that I said that we'd make sure that we give you ample time and fully understand your concerns. So with that, I'll now ask the gentleman here to state his name and address for the record.
Thank you, Mayor. My name is Brendan Kirkwood. My address is 2207 North, 650 West in the Harrisville neighborhood. I've been a resident there for 15 years. I've been a Layton City resident for 21 years. Like I said, I've been asked by several of the residents of that neighborhood to be a spokesperson. So just really briefly, let me give you a quick background about me. I joined the Utah Army National Guard right out of high school. After college, I became a police officer for the Salt Lake City Police Department. I was a police officer for nearly 22 years. I've since retired, and my service as a police officer, I spent 3 years in a community-oriented policing bike squad. Then as a community detective, which is basically a neighborhood detective, I spent 3 years undercover in Vice, which one of the primary responsibilities of a Vice detective is to eradicate prostitution, gambling, and the such. Then I spent 5 years as a detective and as the senior detective of the Salt Lake City Special Victims Unit, so sex crimes. I moved to Layton because it is not Salt Lake City. Okay, I wanted to be as far away from the cesspool that I was working, not to say that all of Salt Lake City is a cesspool, but I didn't want to be anywhere around that. I did not want to raise my family around that. I moved to the neighborhood I'm in because after speaking with many of my brothers and sisters at Layton PD, I realized it was a very good neighborhood. It had everything that my family was looking for, as did all of my neighbors. That's why we lived there. So then when we found out that we were placing a hotel there, that was heartbreaking. That is devastating. Because throughout my experience as a police officer and dealing with the communities there in Salt Lake City, one of my number one issues were residential hotels. These hotels are havens for crime. So regardless of what the applicants are saying, what the city planning office is saying, in the end, this will only be a disaster for our neighborhoods. No, Councilman Bloxham, to answer your question, why this was done in the first place, not to allow a hotel, because it's a residential area. And in the past, they recognized that. There is no reason to put a hotel in a residential area. Just really briefly, well, I've already said that a couple times. I guess it's not that brief. Traffic will increase. It always does. That area, and we were able to pull this yesterday, between University Park Boulevard and Hillfield contains 3 of the top 10 accident areas for traffic in the city. We're going to increase traffic there. It's an estimate right now that 30,000 cars travel that strip on Antelope Drive every day. And now we're going to put a hotel and more restaurants there. Bear in mind, we have an elementary school just to the east, and right through that corridor, right through that path, we have North Layton Junior High School. So all of our children, hundreds of our children, have to walk right by this hotel. Just inherent with hotels, there's going to be property crime. It's going to spill into our neighborhoods. Okay, I don't have the numbers from that from Layton PD. I didn't have time to get that, but just from my experience, property crime is going to go up. More importantly, through my experience for being a vice detective, a community detective, and a sex crimes detective, every single hotel in the world has prostitution and drugs. Every single hotel. You cannot escape it. I pulled prostitutes out of the fanciest, nicest hotels in Salt Lake City and out of the slummiest, dirtbaggiest hotels. When I was a vice detective, I gained information that there's prostitution going rampant in Layton City. So I contacted Layton City PD and says, here's the information. Thank goodness Davis County has a fantastic DA and court system that they'd actually incarcerate prostitutes and get them out of the city. It boggles the mind that we're considering putting a hotel that is going to bring prostitution and drugs right into a residential area. And I guarantee you 100%, you put this hotel there, we are going to have prostitution and drugs. On top of that, and this may seem a little over dramatic, but it's coming from experience, we're going to have hundreds of junior high age kids walking right past this hotel. Well, thank you very much, say the pimps and the drug dealers. There's their clientele and their victims. Now, we're all aware of the issues going on the border with human trafficking. I don't know if we're going to have human trafficking up here, but this is a recipe for disaster. Nothing good will come from putting a hotel there. I drove around today to the hotels down there by Famous Dave's. Not a single one of them had a parking lot more than half full. Now, maybe there's more now because we're later in the evening, but they're not full. I don't understand what the draw is that we would have a hotel there. I mean, I don't know if there's people saying, I'd love to go eat at Chili's, but I just don't have a place to spend the night. Why are we putting a hotel there when we can put it down in the hotel district? It makes sense. I promise you, if you go talk to all of the beat cops in that area, they will respond the same way. It'll be bewilderment. Why are we putting a hotel in a residential area? It makes no sense. On top of that, the Marie Callender's building is vacant. Why not tear that one down and build a hotel there or a restaurant? Why do we want to tear down one of the most popular restaurants in the area, in the base, that thank goodness managed to survive during COVID and all that ridiculousness, and we're going to reward them now by tearing them down to put in a hotel? By the way, when I drove into that parking lot, they had as many cars as all of our other hotels. It is a popular place. Why are we going to get rid of a local business? This is what this is all about, right? This is community. Let's doing what's best for Layton. This is a Layton business that caters to our wonderful neighbors at the Hill Air Force Base, and we're going to reward them by tearing it down. I'll end with this. Our hotels right now, there's too many vacancies in it as it is, so why are we going to put another hotel? But this is the big question. And I already know the answer is somewhat rhetorical, but I'm going to ask it anyway. Would any of you allow a hotel to come up in your neighborhood? Absolutely not. You wouldn't. In fact, I guarantee you if it was proposed in the area of your neighborhood, it never would have gotten to this point. So why in the hell are we going to put it in our neighborhood? This will only end in disaster. It is not a good idea. There's no good outcome. I've read the notes from the previous meetings. Yeah, the hotel says they want to be good neighbors. They will only be good neighbors as long as they're profitable. Once they are no longer profitable, you're going to start to get weekly rates and hourly rates, and that's what's going to bring in increased crime, increased prostitution, increased drug dealing, and it is going to destroy this neighborhood. There's plenty of room, plenty of space in the areas where we have our hotels right now. If they want to build another hotel, they can build it there. So thank you very much for listening to us, and I really hope, we've heard wonderful things today about the community, wonderful things about good planning with water usage and all of that. Let's keep it up, and let's not rezone this area to put a hotel and destroy a neighborhood. Let's just put the hotels where the hotels go. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Hello, everyone. My name is Matt Allred. I live at 779 West Midtown Lane. I'm the one that is right behind the existing retail, David's Bridal. I get to look at David's Bridal sign every night. It's great advertising. And that's actually not a problem. I'm okay with that. I'm a proud husband, a father of 4, 2 twins that were just born. So thank you for the sympathies and the congratulations. Even more importantly, I'm an American, and I love Utah. I love Utah. I've lived in different places. Escaped California right before COVID, and I'm born and raised in Utah, came back, and I'll be here till I die. Like the city council, I too seek to be accountable, transparent, and independent. I appreciate that the city council has run on platforms that are people-focused and data-driven, free of conflicts of interest. I appreciate the focus on private property rights, as well as the ultimate value to run on, and that is raising a family. That is why we moved to Layton, as I think was previously mentioned. I love Layton's motto as well: community, prosperity, and choice. When my wife and I decided to move to Midtown, it was an interesting decision just because it was close to retail. Nonetheless, the balance has been great. Everything shuts down right about 8. We have roughly 20 children that just live along those houses, and it's 7 or 8, I think, that kids are riding their bikes in the streets. I'm out there with my kids. There are tons of pets that are walking around, and that street is not a traffic street. Nobody goes down that street except for those that live there. People ride bikes, they walk in there and everything, and anybody here will tell you that. When we moved in, the idea was played around that it was going to continue to be townhomes, which would have been great. Fast forward now to this hearing. I'm really disappointed to be in a position where we're having to fight to keep our neighborhood a neighborhood. I hear the word urban, and this is not Farmington Station. This is literally a neighborhood that is encroaching onto an urban area. It is not an urban area encroaching onto the opposite of that. Whatever, am I split? We need more houses. We don't need a damn hotel. Excuse my language. The proposed rezoning of the construction of the former 3 drive-throughs. Thank you for the 1 drive-through, which I still hate. But and the 4-story hotel must be denied, whether it is the increased traffic that will come to fruition, not to mention the back road, which Harris Boulevard. I did not know it had a name. You could please tell Google that. That'd be great. The traffic will increase there. That drive-through is, I'm going to be looking out my front window and I will see whether it's 2 or 10, I don't really care. Chick-fil-A is a perfect example of what happens when there is a good restaurant there. That Harris Boulevard, there's an opening, and you'll see that there are houses directly across that. There's going to be cars that will circumvent and go up that way to drop down to get to the hotel or to get to the restaurant at the very bottom. They will go this way and go all the way around the neighborhood, which is not shown. And trust me, I've done this myself, cutting 7-Elevens to get through an intersection, which I know is illegal, but nonetheless, that will happen. There, as I mentioned, there are 20 plus kids. Safety will be the issue, not to mention the high school kids and the elementary kids that I watch, dozens of them walking across an already insanely busy street to try and get home. Not to mention those are fire lanes. all of those, we can't even idle in them. Excuse me, I need to grab some water. Those are fire lanes. We can't even idle nor park along those lanes, which brings the parking issue, which many of us park right above that CP1 at the very top. There is very little parking in the neighborhood, which is a huge complaint. You will see patrons complaining about little parking for the hotel because we will have to park in there, not to mention the Zupas and all those guys. I also watch them. I work from home. I watch them walk across the street because there is no parking on that side. They park in David's Bridal parking lot. They have to walk across the street, and that's probably 30 employees, 30 cars to be exact, I would say. Not to mention the Cisco trucks. Now, if you can please explain to me how you're going to fit a Cisco truck without going down Harris Boulevard, I'm all ears. Not to mention they do come early in the morning to drop off. We already have plenty of garbage noises, and the retaining wall that is proposed, I don't care if it's 30 feet. I hear some garbage that is probably about 200 feet away from my house at 5:30. So that's a huge issue. I think that anybody that works from home, families that are home for any reason, are going to be drastically affected by garbage that will pile up from the hotel, from the restaurants, that blows up. It's a very windy area. That will happen. He already talked about crime. I don't need to go there. I think the biggest thing that I'm really annoyed about is the decreased home value. Again, this is a residential, leaning residential area. I enjoy living by all these places, but man, I'll tell you what, I moved. I love Utah for the mountains, not for the hotel views. I'll cut this down and end here. With just one last thing here. We all work hard to build our businesses. And when I say our businesses, I mean my family and my home. The one thing that builds wealth in my life, which is equity in my home. I'm not an investor. I work hard and take care of my family. And perception will be a huge issue. I'm going to have a hard time selling my house with a hotel and a drive-through that my front yard is used as a through street. To think that this is even like a public opportunity to speak is kind of making me sick. So I would ask you, how are you protecting the families that live in the surrounding area? If you visited the spot, you would find the area is packed already, and proposed designs will do nothing but make our neighborhood less desirable, less safe, and less of what we love so much, a community. Finally, these businesses can move, but we cannot. They can find other land, but we cannot, especially in this market with inflation running rampant in our country. The choice is the motto of our city. It is in the motto. So please consider hundreds of homes that will be without a choice if this proposal is passed. I am anxious to hear a negative vote from all of you on this matter. I appreciate the time, and I pray that you will see what this is, a terrible idea. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Derek Lamb, 809 West, 2175 North, Layton. I'll give you the history. I appreciate you asking that question. I've been there 21 years, and when the development went from the cow field to where it is today, a huge developer in this city, who you would all know, came to me and said, there is a development agreement that they're not telling you about. So we brought the development agreement before the council, and they got pretty upset. There were some red faces because I asked them why they were changing this development agreement. And there was no answer. A development agreement is a legally binding contract between a property owner or developer and local government. They broke that. So when I called my friend on the planning commission and said, why in the world would you approve this? He said something important. He said, well, this is land. They can do with it what they want. But they can't unless you allow them. They can't. Because the reason this was amended before is because we fought for hours and hours and hours and hours 15 years ago to get it where it is today. And if you change it again, it's just like boiling a frog. No one will remember that. We'll just change it again. And so you really, in my opinion, need to get a little bit emotional about this. It's funny when they say not to get emotional when you get up here, but these people just described the number one thing we invest in is our real estate and our families. You can't do this. Don't break this development agreement again. I don't know what year it was. I'll email y'all and try and find out. Go back and read the minutes from those. Read those development agreements. Read what happened. It wasn't good. They broke it. Don't break it again.
I'm Kirby Christensen, 2063 North, 650 West. So my backyard will actually be the hotel and the nice landscape buffer where they can conduct their drug deals and prostitution deals. And we'll sit and watch it over our fence. Another big concern I have, which I don't think has been brought up, I think there's a lot of good things about the hotel they've talked about as far as their concerns. With Raising Cane's, I don't know if you've ever had Raising Cane's, best chicken strips you've ever had in your life. That place is going to make Chick-fil-A look like a kid's playground. They're going to be so packed with cars. And I don't know what you're going to do on Antelope. We can't get out onto Antelope from 650 West half of the year. You know, as soon as Halloween hits until after Christmas, you're waiting 5 minutes to get through out the street. And when Raising Cane's goes in there, the traffic is going to be horrendous. Also, the garbage where they're going to put however size wall they want, it's the noise. We hear the noise from them dumping the garbage to the base now. And that's 200 feet away. And if that's 20 feet from my backyard, it's going to be a lot worse no matter how big a wall you build. Another question I had for the Planning Commission, when I was at the Planning Commission meeting last month, the number they gave us was that the hotel was going to be at least 100 feet away from the wall. And now he says 90. Is it going to be 80 next week? 70 the next? You know, this thing changes at their whim instead of what they agreed to in their meeting. You need to really take a good look at this. I've been there for 26 years. I bought my home. There were horses and cows in my backyard. The master plan said that was going to be a residential development. And we fought. Derek, we fought big time to get what we got. And it's a relatively decent compromise. But that was the development agreement that we need to stick with. You're throwing this residents into the garbage. You're just throwing us away. And it's just not right. Thanks for your time.
Thank you.
Hello, Mayor, Council. Thank you for your time this evening. My name is Garrett Goff, and I'm representing the developer on the north, so the drive-through and the hotel. I'm at 78 West Heritage Park Boulevard in Layton City. We would like to move forward. We would like to make a motion to move forward with the drive-through getting passed through the development agreement and amended, and tabling the discussion and vote on the hotel so we can do some more community outreach, so we can do some more investigating on our side. Have any questions for me as well? Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is James Powell. I'm with Raising Cane's. We're here to answer any questions. My address is 760 Coyote Creek Drive, Gordonville, Texas, 76245. And just any questions you have, I've got my architect here, my civil engineer, and we also voluntarily did a sound study that we can talk about if you want.
No, I think it's allowed.
That's a question, Mayor.
Absolutely. This is the time for us to ask questions as well.
Mr. Powell, thanks for being here. Just a question. You opened the one in South Jordan. Is that yours as well?
Yes, sir. Yeah,
How
they're
is
all
that?
corporate stores.
How has that gone? And talk to us about the traffic. Talk to us about the lines.
Typically when they open a Raising Cane's, it's a big deal. They do a lot of marketing, and the opening few weeks are very busy. They'll hire off-duty police officers to direct traffic, and so it is breaking records from my understanding. Now that'll settle down obviously after they get open for a little while. But the one thing about this site, it doesn't have a direct access to a road. You actually have to travel in to get into it. And one thing they've learned with the pandemic, and since people have been flocking to the drive-through restaurants, is instead of having just a single drive-through lane, they've actually gone to a double and even have a triple bypass lane that they can stack cars in to come up with to accommodate peak periods, and they'll manage that. They actually have a management plan for the traffic that is in phases. So as the traffic increases, they'll open up the other lane, and then even the third lane, and they'll have. Instead of everybody ordering at a speaker, they'll have the employees out with iPads taking orders, and it just facilitates getting through and accommodates the stack so it doesn't flow out onto the street. They also have a focused menu. I mean, when you go there, you're going to get chicken fingers. They don't have a lot of variety. So, it should cut down, typically does, trying to figure out what you're going to have once you get up to the order board. The other thing they do, once they see cars start coming in, they go ahead and start dropping the chicken into the fryers. So it's ready, and you're not having to wait as long. So it helps to facilitate getting the people in and out of there. Typically, their peak periods are, lunch and dinner, obviously, 11 to 1:30 for lunch, and probably 5 to 8 for dinner, tailing off, toward the 8 mark.
So how late is the restaurant open at night? I heard something about possibly till 2 a.m. in the morning.
Their standard hours, they like to be open from Sunday through Thursday from 9:30 a.m. to 2:30. And then on Friday and Saturday, they like to be open until 3:30. Now,
We're talking a.m. So, okay.
I'm sorry.
3:30 a.m.
Yes, ma'am. Yeah. And that's like I say, that's their standard hours. They do have some other units that are, maybe not open that late, or maybe some variation. It kind of depends on the area, and I know there's a hospital right down the road, so late night shift workers, that kind of thing. So,
well, a couple of questions, Mr. Powell. Thank you for being here. Two anecdotes that I want to see, because you're the man who have the information. One, have you seen an increase? We've seen an increase, at least I have anecdotally, in Layton with the usage of drive-thrus since COVID. Have you seen that in your business? Has there been a big increase in the amount of customers who want a drive-through service for meals?
Well, to start with, once COVID hit, all the dining rooms shut down, so they don't let people in to order. So that's why I say they've kind of evolved the drive-through to accommodate on their new restaurants, to accommodate the stack.
Kind of felt like a new normal that we got used to, right? A new normal because the inside's closed, so a lot of people just go to the drive-throughs now.
Yeah, so that should, once they open up the dining rooms more, and every state's different. In Texas, for instance, they're already open.
Yeah, we're open.
Open. So
we're open.
Yeah, and another thing they do is they've implemented or put in mobile ordering parking. So you can come in, you can mobile order. You don't have to get in line and tie up the drive-through, and you can just text your number and they'll bring your food out to you. But
have you had experiences with stacking into the roadways and just? I know you mentioned the Raising Cane's down in South Jordan have had incredible success. That you think it's going to trail off, but I know Councilman Day, I can speak for him because he just told me this, but I had heard it too, that they had a lot of backup down there because they've had a lot of people who want to go to Raising Cane's. And so my question is that, is this a big enough space for this type of development?
yeah, I think it is. They've, like I said, gone to the 3-lane drive-through to handle the accommodations, and they're not directly on the street. And I'm not going to lie to you. They do have locations that are older with a single drive-through lane that they don't have any room to expand or make any accommodations. So, that can back it up onto a street. Now, if that is happening, like I say, they're more than willing to hire off-duty police officers to direct traffic, and they'll wave people on. They won't let them just stack in the street.
Right close by, you have Chick-fil-A, which is incredibly popular around here. And they've made great use of that area to try to do as best they can with the number of people that are there. But they're closed on Sunday. They're not open at 2 o'clock in the morning. And so it's a little bit different. So my question is that with this location kind of close to some residential areas, when it's the late night, do they still go to the speaker or do they come up to the window? Is there ways to modify the
open? The dining room's open, so they can go in if they want.
Okay.
And we use variable volume speakers, so they can automatically adjust to the ambient noise. So, if there's a lot of street traffic, it'll automatically, go up. But if there's not that much noise, they can set it to a minimum or a maximum for that, for the location.
Okay.
Sounds like you got a great restaurant, and you're kind of like the Chicken King to the In-N-Out Burger. Council, do you have any other questions for him? Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Hello, I'm Amy Jones. I live on 2 East 2350 North Layton, Utah. I just wanted to say again that we already have so many hotels, and I don't think either thing is a good idea. And I think we should have more good food, food that we can eat and that will sustain our bodies and help us if they're gonna change restaurants. I just think we need more of that than chicken. There's fried chicken at Buffalo Wild Wings. There's Chick-fil-A. I know, but I don't know. I just don't. You guys should be on the right side of history, I think. So, thank you.
Yeah. I'm curious.
Hello.
Hello.
Good evening. My name is Don Smith. I live at 650 West, 2073 North. I'm basically the fourth house up from Chick-fil-A, which is not in a residential area, so it's a good non-comparative. On a couple things. Trash location, I know we kind of talked about that. We're directly behind. The location of the trash right now at the base is connected to the building. And we hear it's not necessarily, well, it is the dumpster, but it's the backing up. It's the beep, beep. I think the gentleman mentioned it. It's the beep, beep, beep you hear at 5:30. I've gone over there myself a couple times and talked to the drivers. So, and it's posted on, I have a picture, Layton City, there's a notice on the wall of the building and the dumpster area. Per Layton City Code, no services are allowed before 7 a.m. And it happens all the time. I've spoken with the previous owner of the Boston's, and he said, well, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to tell you. So having it closer to our fence, and even though they put a sound barrier, is not going to work because that beeping, for one, let alone picking it up, shaking it, it's anyway, we kind of talked about that, but that's a big concern. My other concern is I've been in the restaurant business, resorts, Sundance Resort, hotels, Hotel Park City, a lot of hotels for over 25 years. I understand the business of food and beverage and hotels. And particularly with Raising Cane, Mr. Powell, I understand your business quite well, sir. And having that restaurant open till 2:30, 3:30 in the morning, it's not going to happen. Not going to work. Not going to work. Every one of these people in the room will say the same thing. It's going to be a disturbance. I worked in this business. What happens after we close, people they sit outside the back of the building. Some are smoking, some are talking about what they're going to do the next couple hours, and they get a little loud. And then currently what happens is that one or two of the younger kids have a hot rod or whatever, and they speed around the parking lot, and everybody hears that. So 2:30, 3 o'clock in the morning, and let alone just the traffic going through the drive-through. It's going to be louder than what it is now. That's for sure. So I just wanted to bring that up. And then the sight line, well, I think they talked about that. I believe that's all I have. And I thank you for your time.
Thank you very much.
I'm sorry, I did want to say that we had 2 alternate locations that we could move our trash area away from the residential. One is either to the south or one is over to the west at the exit to our drive-through. And we're willing to do that or take a look at it. And then if you guys want to hear, Chris Bick is our civil engineer, and he worked on the West Jordan site, and he could answer any questions or kind of take you through that as well. And, we also did a sound study, like I say. If we've got our consultant here, if you want to hear from him as well. And I guess just on a final note, we're not saying we have to be open till then, but I was just stating our standard hours. That's it could probably be scaled back, I'm sure.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, I think you were up first and then this side. So the gentleman in the red shirt, go ahead.
Yeah, so I'm Chris Bick, 305 West Cassie Way in Saratoga Springs. I just kind of clarify a few things on the South Jordan side that you were talking about. I just wanted to point out first off, it's a big success. But also please note that's the first in Raising Cane's in all of Utah. So you had people like me coming from Saratoga Springs up to South Jordan. You had people from Ogden coming down to South Jordan, all over Utah. The one thing that I was super impressed with was the traffic management that Cane's did, even with that being the only store. Also, another disadvantage of that store is it was a legacy proto, an older proto, that had 2 menu boards, but then it necked down into 1 lane. This one's got 2 lanes with the 3rd bypass lane as well, which would reduce the stacking by more than half. The other thing to keep in mind is we're currently under construction in several other locations. So when this store opens, you won't have people coming up from Provo and Salt Lake to come to these locations. We'll have 3 or 4 other stores that are open. And then, just speaking more to that traffic, I guess, Jim mentioned as well, like with the phasing plan, they open up the additional lanes, but then they also brought in off-duty police officers to direct the traffic in South Jordan. So even with all the cars that were stacked up with the first store in Utah, they were able, like I was able to drive through the lanes and get around the restaurant because of that additional management that they were put in place, which was really nice. And then, yeah, we have a couple other site plans. I've got them on here. I'm not sure best way to share them if you'd like to see kind of alternative locations for what we've kind of considered for trash, but definitely open to doing that as well. And then we've got a sound consultant that can speak to he took measurements for the speaker at South Jordan versus ambient noises so that we can do a comparison at equal distances for where it would be in Layton. And we can measure those and kind of show what the decibels are along the property lines as well for that. And I think he could do a really good job kind of explaining what noises you could anticipate. Even though the South Jordan site, being as busy as it was with the ground opening and the first store in Utah, the noise levels are going to be up. There's going to be more cars. But even with that comparison, you'll be able to see how the decibels are a lot lower than you would anticipate. Thank you.
I do have a question for you.
Oh, yes.
So how close to residential is the South Jordan location?
There's actually residential multifamily directly across the street. Yeah, so the South Jordan location, and we don't have the building laid on here. It's actually that western lot on the left there. But the drive-through is along that north lane, drive, Azura Lane, and there's multifamily directly across from that.
Across the street.
Yep.
So any of the other ones that you're proposing to build literally adjacent to a residential area with only a landscape barrier separating them?
Are there like
any of your other sites that you're proposing? You said you had a couple other sites in Utah being proposed.
We do, yeah.
Are they directly adjacent to a residential area with only? This one has a street. I mean, that's different. Are any of the others directly adjacent to a residential neighborhood, like in their backyard?
Not the immediate ones that are going to be opening. However, this one has the speakers much closer to the residential than this store opening in your city will have.
Okay.
The speakers are literally right up on Azura Lane, probably about 50 feet from the multifamily units there. And we're about 150 feet from residential for this site that we're proposing here. So it'd be almost triple the distance.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Go ahead and step up and state your name and address for the record.
Gavin Yime, 2118 North, 725 West. I love chicken. I love fried chicken. I've actually been 2 times to the Raising Cane's down in South Jordan. And ironically, my sister-in-law lives down the street from the Raising Cane's. She lives about 3 blocks down the street. And when it opened, the 2 times we went, the line was 3 blocks in the middle of the turning lane, so going north, all the way down to outside her window in her apartment. So yeah, they've been successful, and it's going to happen again. There's going to be traffic. It's going to go out into the street, especially if there's a hotel there. There's nowhere else to go but up into the mid-court lane, or the mid, where I live. Speaking on chicken, there's a Popeyes just down the street. The traffic also goes into the street. There's the Chick-fil-A. The traffic goes into the street. There's no way to avoid this. The traffic's going to go into the street. Like there's no management you can do to avoid that. They haven't really talked about that. I just wanted to be transparent with you guys. The traffic goes about 3 blocks into the street when they open. So something to keep in mind. Thanks.
So we'll go from a dairy farm to a chicken corner. So anyway, go ahead and step up and state your name.
council members. My name is Dan Van Zeeben. I'm the architect on this project, and I do represent the developer. I would like to make a couple of comments and then ask a question. And I realize that Mr. Crane is your counselor, but I would like to ask a question regarding the request that Garrett had made earlier regarding the withdrawal. First of all, I would like to point out that on Harris Boulevard is on this property. It is not a public road. It is not part of the residential component to the north. It is on this property. There is an agreement or a common access agreement, but there is no parking. There is no parking agreement for the property that is here. That development should have been approved to be able to park itself and its development. I wanted to make that point. That is one of those points that why I now have recommended to Mr. Goff that we request that the amendment to the development agreement allowing for a hotel on this site be withdrawn. We would like to withdraw that formally in this meeting. I'd like to ask if Mr. Crane could give some advice to the council on how that may be accomplished at this meeting. We would still like to have the consideration for the amendment to the drive-through on the CP1, but we would like to request that we withdraw for the purpose of gaining more information, particularly from the neighbors and those around, identifying more accurate information for the council to make an informed decision on that particular item.
So the applicant has a right to withdraw. This is a contractual issue, and if the applicant does not want that part of the contract, enter into the contract with that part of the contract in there, he can do that. They'd be permitted to do that. So they can withdraw the contract, that part of the contract which allows for a hotel.
So then, Gary, what that would do then is it would take the hotel off the table. It's also taking the strip of the CP1 off the table because they don't need it for the second drive-through of the restaurant, correct? So all that would still be left on the table would be the proposed place for Cane's?
Well,
that's not ours.
No, the question
is a separate item.
Yeah, the question would be, the only thing they're asking to be taken off the table would be the hotel. Everything else, the amendment to CP1, my understanding is they're still wanting to remain to keep that on.
Well, but the strip, what's the purpose for the strip in the CP1?
Just to enlarge the CP1 area.
And as we had mentioned earlier, that strip is no longer needed because we've changed it to a single drive-through facility. We don't need to push it farther over to the east.
So the ordinance could be amended to remove that strip.
That strip, okay.
Mm-hmm.
And I just wanted to clarify.
It is our desire, yes.
To remove that strip from the rezone.
That is correct, yes.
I just wanted to clarify, the development agreement only prohibits a drive-through specific to this address here. It does not preclude a drive-through at this location. So they're entitled under the development agreement and the current CP1 zoning to what's depicted here.
Okay. And I apologize for this kind of confusion and other things. I just, in sitting here, as you see, I have a lot of gray hair. I've done this for many years, and I am concerned that, number one, we need to hear more from the public. We need to understand that. We had a good conversation with a few people after the Planning Commission hearing, but my biggest concern is that there is not sufficient data and facts. While I respect your position and the decisions that you would be able to make from what has been presented by your staff, I am concerned that there is not enough information that we can present to refute, and so we would like to have that request on the hotel be withdrawn for this evening's discussion and vote.
And so does everybody understand the request and the implication of the request, or would you like me to repeat?
I kind of do, but then So there's currently a restaurant on the lower section, the south section, right? Currently zoned the way it's zoned.
Correct.
Why would there need to be a zone change to take it from the base to Canes? Because of the drive-through?
Because of the drive-through.
It's the only reason that request is being asked. And then basically, is that tied to the development agreement too?
It is.
Okay.
The development agreement prohibits a drive-through at that location.
Okay.
There is significance, however, to your denial of the zone change on the existing BRP.
Okay.
If you fail to change that zoning and deny it tonight, they could not make another zone change request for CP1 on there for another year, for a year.
At the restaurant site.
At the restaurant site.
But by excluding that strip, does that impact the length of time that they could do it?
No.
Okay.
And one clarification to that as well is that the Raising Cane site is a separate application than the hotel site.
But it's in the same development agreement, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
All these properties were in a single development, a master development agreement. So there were two ways that we could have done it. We could have put together a brand new agreement, which essentially canceled their part in this previous agreement. Or we could just, because both applications were in a similar area, we could put both applications, we could amend both applications with a single amendment to the development agreement. And that's the way we selected to do it. Sorry for the confusion.
This is a doozy.
Yep.
Yeah.
I do need to provide one more clarification. So what I said about a drive-through and restaurant being allowed at this proposed location still stands. That is not precluded by the development agreement. The development agreement specific to this existing retail where the Rodworks is precludes both a drive-through and a sit-down restaurant. And the applicant would like to propose to amend the development agreement as is currently in the draft amendment to allow for a sit-down restaurant in this building, but they're not proposing a drive-through. So that would be the one for this evening approval that they would request for amended agreement.
So that would be an additional implication of the amendment to the development agreement. It would be, it looks like, I didn't see that.
I got to tell you, this is getting complicated as we go on.
Yeah.
And I'm like,
But it is in the proposed amendments already. I just wanted to point that out in particular.
Right.
Want me to run through that real quick? Or
well, we obviously have more citizens here that still want to speak. So I think
if they're speaking to the hotel is off the table. So they're welcome to do that. There's no problem with your accepting comments on the hotel because it will eventually come back to you probably. But if you choose not, if you want to go ahead and do it tonight, you can do it tonight, or you can do it when it actually does come back to you as an actual amendment.
So the little strip going north is also off the table right now.
That's correct.
Yeah.
That's correct.
Okay. So I'm actually going to entertain any additional comments from the residents, should it be anything other than the hotel, and that you haven't covered already in what somebody else has made at this point.
Hi, Joe Morris, 1044 North, 2875 West in Layton, Utah. I'm the acoustical engineer who did the sound study on the existing canes in South Jordan and the existing location, or the proposed location in Layton. Mostly for that location would be an ambient sound study. And I'm here to field any questions that you would have pertaining to my report.
Okay, does anybody have any questions?
Well, yeah, everybody's telling us that garbage makes a lot of noise. So how are you going to make it where it doesn't make noise?
Unfortunately, my sound study was not pertained to the garbage. I can provide numbers from other locations, but they wouldn't apply here.
Right. What would you do in a place? I mean, you've obviously had to deal with garbage before.
Mm-hmm.
So what would be a good, I don't know. I'm not a sound
mitigation. Mitigation. what would be a good treatment or mitigation recommendation?
Yeah, you
right?
can use any word. You use lawyer words. No, you tell me what you're thinking.
So, pertaining to sound, distance is one factor.
That's good. Yeah.
And barrier, some type of barrier, thick, dense, CMU, something concrete heavy.
Right.
And tall, because low frequencies will travel sometimes through, depending on the thickness and the material of the barrier, will travel through or around a barrier, depending on the height. Those are the two main factors for outdoor noise that would help limit or mitigate sound for surrounding areas.
What about the backup? That ding ding, whatever it's called.
So those are high frequencies. High frequencies are very, very easy to mitigate because of that barrier.
Narrow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because high frequencies are very, very small wavelengths.
Yeah, I know, but
they travel. It depends on the sound. The sound level for sure.
Yeah, I mean they don't travel in one spot.
No, they're spherical. Absolutely.
I mean, it's, and so.
Okay.
I mean, I don't want to say I don't think you can stop it, but I don't know how you can.
Right.
Yeah. Without the biggest thing is distance.
One of the biggest things.
I mean,
yes.
that's yeah.
Yeah.
But if it's right behind your house, you're going to hear it.
Yeah, and also time frame. So time frame. Meaning
if you do it at noon when everybody's driving through, you'll be fine.
Exactly. Yeah, it's masked.
And remember, the gentleman was willing to move that too, so that's on the table as well. That they were willing to move that trash area. So.
Yeah, I just wondered.
Okay.
Just moving it.
Let's.
Those are two big points for that.
Okay. Does anyone else have a question for this gentleman? Okay. Very good. Thank you for your time. Okay. I believe. You're up. Go ahead.
Dion Kirkwood, 2207 North, 650 West. My question is, if Raising Cane really wants to come to Layton, I mean, we all love good restaurants, can they go to another location that is not in a residential neighborhood? Can they go to Marie Callender that's sitting vacant? Can they go to another building that's sitting vacant and still come to Layton, but just not in the residential neighborhood?
Okay.
My name is Morris Pusey. I'm one of the current owners of the property where the base is and part of that business. And we've had that since 2007. And Boston's operated up until COVID. When COVID hit, we closed the restaurant down for 3 months, did everything we could to gather capital and gain resources to reopen. And struggled to get by and have. But it's been an extreme challenge, and it still is an extreme challenge, and it's very dynamic. And I can tell you that before, I appreciate the feedback and what has been said. I think anytime you deal with difficult circumstances or situations, it's very important to consider the other person's the shoes they're walking in, the circumstances that they're dealing with, and they're very real. My garbage in my residential area is emptied every week at 6:30. It does wake me up. And I can tell you that I've had numerous conversations with the people that do the dumpster pickup, and between putting stickers and signs and calling them up, we've even had them write into their contract that if on the second occurrence of them dumping those dumpsters prior to 7 a.m., the contract is terminated and we will stop using them. We have a camera that goes on that dumpster area, and we can monitor it. And so if we ever have a complaint or ever have an issue, we can go back and look at the cameras and see exactly what time, and we can forward that on to them. Hopefully, Canes in the future could do something similar to that in a contract to hold them accountable. As we all know, as an independent company, I can't have 100% control over that. It's been a privilege to have a restaurant and a business in Layton over the years. Unfortunately, it has not been a profitable business. We've stayed and made a lot of sacrifices. We've paid a lot of sales tax. We've paid a lot of employment tax. We've employed a heck of a lot of people over the years. And we've made a lot of great friends and built a lot of great relationships. But I can tell you it's not been a great business decision. We've had a lot of people that have had interest in this property over the last several years, most of them restaurants, some other businesses as well. This is a chance for us to relocate the base in another location where hopefully we can reestablish an overhead that we can survive under the current circumstances. Economically, I don't think it can happen. I do believe that, just to give you some background, before opening that restaurant, I had 25 years experience owning and operating fast food restaurants. And there is what we refer to as ingress egress. And that is the flow of traffic and how it comes into the business and out of the business. This is a very extraordinary piece of property where you have that whole acre out front that does not have a direct access one way or the other off Antelope Drive. You have to pull onto 7th West, up the road, and then pull onto the property. By the time the cars pull onto the property, they come down to that corner and they go up to the menu board where they have 3 lanes and they're going to be able to stack it back around. You're going to be containing that extraordinary traffic, which it probably will when they open up. They'll have that extraordinary traffic that will be confined to that 1 acre of that property there. As they come in and out, there may need to be some additional arrangements made, but I can tell you after running a restaurant sports bar, which was open, by the way, till 1 a.m. in the morning for 13 years. And when the employees got done cleaning, they left between 1:30 and 2:33 in the morning. There was often nights where I left there at 3 o'clock in the morning to go home. So there's been activity on that property late into the evening. When COVID hit and we closed the restaurant, we reopened with shorter hours because it just, for a variety of reasons. But the concept was always one that stayed open till 1 a.m. and had people in and out of that parking lot till 2:30, 3 a.m. in the morning. Anyhow, it's, I believe, very, very different than Chick-fil-A or a Popeyes chicken because, again, if you go to look at Popeyes, behind their menu board, you can only stack 4 cars behind it before they're backed out onto Antelope Drive, and it creates that cluster. On Chick-fil-A, you have an entrance or exit off Antelope Drive directly into it, or you have one from 7th West that goes down that comes into it, and they're sharing that with a bank. It's very congested the way you enter and exit. It's very extraordinary, and I can see why it's such a challenge. This one is unique where no matter how badly it backs up, is it possible it could back up to 7th West? It is possible. Could it ever back up to Antelope? That's not possible. So it doesn't not going to infringe on that Antelope traffic up and down. Now, again, appreciating all your concerns that you have, there's going to be something else there one way or the other. This property is zoned for commercial. It's either going to be another restaurant, and if I lived there, I would be concerned about a variety of things, but you're talking about a restaurant sports bar or a chicken fast food restaurant. I can tell you collectively, the officer earlier was talking about, crime and this and that and everything else. Understand he's got some tremendous experience that I appreciate more than anything, the service. Our officers are under a lot of pressure these days. I'd much rather have a fast food restaurant there if I lived right there than I would a restaurant and sports bar personally, but that's just my opinion. Again, I would simply point out the very unique component of the fact that you're entering off 7th West, going down onto that acre of land that's all owned by, they would be purchasing, or they would have access to all of that. And the amount of people that they can serpentine and they can line up through there is tremendous compared to any other fast food location that you could find. I would challenge you to drive around Layton, look at any other fast food restaurant and look at where their menu board is and look at how many cars they can stack behind and where that goes. This is pretty unique, and they can put a lot of people in there without a lot of hassle. That's my opinion. Anyway, so with that being said, I can't respond to the hotel or any of that 100% just to that location. And again, it's been there for a long time, since 2007. It's not a perfect situation. If I live right behind there, I know that, when I hear that beep, beep, beep in the morning, when I would open the restaurant, I can tell you, I can hear it from inside. And I can appreciate your aggravation over that. That's a challenge. And I can't tell you how many times I was on the phone with them, and we've changed dumpster companies over the years because of that very fact. If you can't abide by these policies, well, what I would suggest and what I would hope is that an enforcement officer from the city could come enforce that. Because as soon as a company is told, listen, you break that, you're going to be fined and you're going to have to pay that penalty, they're probably going to do a heck of a lot better job communicating to a new driver or a substitute driver what's going on. Because that's usually when it happens, is when there's some form of substitute driver. The regular guy knows that that's not okay, it's not acceptable. But anyway, I appreciate your time, appreciate your consideration. I can tell you that it's been a really rough ride, and I think that we have one of the absolute very best potential restaurants to come in there, be successful, employ more people, contribute to the community. Is it going to have its own unique challenges compared to what's there now? Yes, but I think this is a fantastic opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you. Ma'am, if you'd like to step up, state your name.
Hi, Teresa Rhodes, 2220 North, 725 West in Layton. And so I appreciate a lot of the discussion that's happened on the traffic. I'm not familiar with Raising Cane. It sounds super popular. And the gentleman just talked about the capacity of the parking lot. My concern is with the numbers of people that are coming into the area and how they are going to weave through the neighborhood that is directly north as Antelope backs up, as the elementary school kids are coming through and the school zone gets implemented. People currently cut through the neighborhood. There's a stop sign directly north of that area that on many occasions people just blast through there as they're trying to cut through. So traffic's been discussed, but I don't recall this topic, as people are trying to avoid Antelope. Sounds like a lot of potential customers might be wanting to be coming into this restaurant, and just this increased traffic flow, people are not going to wait at that intersection in Antelope, and they're going to be cutting through this neighborhood where we have kids on bikes, people walking, and things like that. So just wanted to raise that point that, that residential area, you're going to have a lot of people trying to cut through that as they're trying to avoid that backup and congestion on Antelope. So thank you.
Thank you.
Listen, I apologize if I'm out of order because I've already spoken. Tell me and I'll go sit down. But again, Brendan Kirkwood, just as a point of clarification, we as residents, we understand that's zoned already for a restaurant, and a restaurant will be there. To the gentleman from the base, I love your barbecue chicken pizza. My family loves it. Hopefully you stay in the Layton area if you're intent on moving, because we're going to find you and we're going to get that pizza because it's fantastic. Speaking personally, if Raising Cane's wants to go there, I actually have no problem with that. Our main issue was the hotel, which apparently has been at least temporarily, hopefully permanently resolved to not go in there. My biggest concern, and it involves the hotel and whatever restaurant, is that there seems to have been absolutely no community impact study for this area for any of this. I mean, Mr. Watkins almost admitted that. I mean, the developer said, hey, we have to do more studies. So how on earth did this pass the Planning Commission if there's been zero studies on this stuff? That doesn't make any sense to me. That being said, we as residents, we understand that that's zoned for a restaurant, and we're not opposed to a restaurant. Me personally, I'm not going to speak for the residents on this. I'm not opposed to Raising Cane's. I'll try chicken. I mean, obviously, I eat plenty of junk food. Okay, I'm okay with that. Whether it's Raising Cane's, I personally love to see a Wiener Schnitzel go in there. Okay, so hey, don't judge. We understand that a restaurant's going in there, but I would just ask that before we do anything, let's do some studies. Let's figure out exactly what the impact is. I personally think, I don't know how we can guarantee the traffic won't go out there. I think it will, because having been that police officer hired out to do traffic control and things like this, it is a nightmare. Because the number one thing I learned as a police officer is that human beings, I don't care where you're from, are terrible drivers and they don't pay attention. I mean, we are all, regardless of our age, a bunch of 3-year-olds. Okay, so let's do some studies, but we as citizens, we understand the zoning there. We're not saying don't put anything there. We understand that. that's zoned for a restaurant. Let's do some studies. But absolutely, again, I know it's tabled, but don't put a hotel there. There's absolutely, it makes zero sense. There's no reason to do that. Restaurants, by all means, you know, we get it. It's there. That's one of the reasons we moved here, is the walkability to some pretty cool restaurants, whether it's Wiener Schnitzel, Raising Cane's, not Burger King. Don't put a Burger King there ever, please. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay.
Gavin Yipe, chicken lover again. I'm also not opposed to Raising Cane's. I just want to tag on, if it is in Raising Cane's power to do something for the community in the northern part of that section, I think some of the community members would be willing to hear that out. Like a park would be really nice for the community or something like that. What is it called? Splash pad. I don't know. Yeah, chicken park. Just throwing that out there for Raising Cane's if you want to reach out to the community and talk to us.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you. Okay. I failed to check with our attorney to see if there was any comments online.
It's 7:30. No, there's just one other, Laura Helmy, but she's saying the same thing that everybody else says.
Okay. Thank you very much. New comment?
I was just going to respond to that
we've got a lot of repeats here.
We'd be glad to sit down and talk. One thing that Raising Cane's tries to be is involved in the community. And so, yeah, we'd be perfectly willing to do that and show them options or talk about mitigations.
Okay. Thank you. I do appreciate that. And I would say definitely we need you in this city based upon all the feedback I've heard. Okay,
Nanette
ma'am.
Smith, 650 West, 2073 North.
What was your name again?
Nanette Smith.
Nana?
Nanette.
Oh, Nanette. Okay, sorry.
So I just have a couple of things. Can there be some kind of code that says the hours that they can be open? 3:30 in the morning? Really? And also, for your information, Lincoln Elementary is considered our neighborhood park. So tell me how we go take our kids or grandkids to Lincoln Elementary from 8 to 3 any day, and that's okay. Because that's what Layton City told us years ago when we fought for a park right there. So go to the city park there at Lincoln Elementary and play with your kids. Right? Thanks.
Thank you. Okay. Sure. Well,
Okay. Getting as tired as we are, Gary. So I just want to make sure I understand everything. So on the west property, the motion would be to allow a restaurant in the existing building. That's the only change that they're asking on that for the development agreement, correct?
Hey, this would be real easy this way. The only thing we are taking out of what you see before you in the development agreement tonight is the hotel language. And so everything else will be left in the ability to have a restaurant in the existing retail building.
And is there an
Tim was talking
exemption
about.
for drive-through on that as well?
Right now, there is an exemption, but this also takes the exemption off a drive-through for these two areas. And realistically, you would be able to look at any conversion to a drive-through in there anyway to make sure the traffic works.
But what if they were to tear that building down and move it a little bit and build a restaurant with a drive-through?
May be able to do that.
So is there a way to word it such that the restaurant could be allowed, but a drive-through would continue to be prohibited at that particular location?
The difficult thing is you're designing for the developer, and that's not appropriate to design for the developer. Let the developer come in and recommend to you what they would like to put there, and you tell them that it will or will not work based on their traffic flow studies and that type of thing. But to say that building there should never have a drive-through would probably not be appropriate. The developer has before you an application for a drive-through, and to be able to convert that just to that would be a sit-down restaurant. It wouldn't be a drive-through at this point.
But that's is it stipulated in there that it's a sit-down restaurant?
No. but they would have to come in and demonstrate to you that they could convert that to a drive-through. And just looking at the way that they've established the drive-through on the Raising Cane, there's no way that you could put a drive-through at that location right now. And so they would have to come in and do some redesigning, and they would have to have you approve it. And that's what I'm saying is, you know, you don't want to say, no, you can never have, if you in the development agreement say you can never have a drive-through in that area that is designated CP1 and the area down below that is CP1, except for this drive-through up here and that drive-through down there, then you're limiting what can actually happen on that site. The average life of a commercial business is 20 years, quite frankly. And so I think that existing retail may be coming up to 20 years, and some of those other buildings may be doing the same thing. So let them come back in and let them make a recommendation to you.
So is that not what we're doing with the hotel, though? It was excluded in a zone that it was absolutely allowed in, and that planning or that city council excluded something. I don't see the difference than us saying, well, you have a CP1 there, but you can't have a drive-through in it. I mean, they did it in the BRP. You can't have a hotel in it.
It's vacant ground. The area that you're talking about is vacant.
Is currently vacant. Okay.
So that's the difference.
And on the Raising Canes, if it's allowed and the drive-through goes through, can a time limit be put on how late they can keep the drive-through open?
You could.
Okay.
Okay.
Let me just say this too. There's some rights that develop over time because somebody actually puts something in. And, you know, just now we heard that some of those uses, that use up front was open till 1 a.m. It wasn't necessarily a drive-through, but, you know, those types of things are considerations when a person has a use there. So literally they could put another bar or sports bar there that would have exactly the same rights as what is already there. And so that's a consideration too when you're looking at zone changes or things changing zoning. Otherwise you'll end up with some nonconformities.
But if you put another sports bar there and we haven't changed anything, it still can't have a drive-through.
It still can't have a drive-through.
So, no. I mean, I'm not object to Cane's going there and being open till 3 o'clock in the morning on the inside, but 3 o'clock in the morning outside is a concern that close to residential areas.
So that is something you could look at,
at
regulating.
Okay. Is anybody bold enough to make a
I'm a little
motion
confused
here?
on the drive-through. Is that eliminated because of the CP1 zone?
The drive-through is eliminated specifically because of the development agreement.
Because I can't see and hear where that is.
Is that, Tim, correct?
That's correct.
When I read it earlier, I could tell you where it is, but I don't have the agreement in front of me, so I apologize.
This is probably the worst one I've ever known.
Oh, sorry. Would you mind, it'd take me just a moment to find that?
Sure. Yeah, if you'd like to go ahead and make a comment, go ahead. State your name and address, though.
Okay, Heidi Geigel, 783 West Midtown Lane. We don't have a street sign in front of our name. We are actually on the Harris Boulevard. So really, I guess we're trying to protect our neighborhood. Happy to hear the things about the hotel that maybe not happening, being tabled. But as far as that street, the Harris Boulevard, right in front. So I live right there. We live right on the corner. And as Matt said, it is a fire lane. It's very tiny. And we can't see, but back in the back of the property, there are some driveways that it looks like they can get out that way. I prefer that it be just a solid, no driveways. I don't know, curb, whatever you're going to do, sidewalk. You see that back there?
Well, yeah, but the far north side is where you're talking.
Yeah. So we really would like to protect that street, protect our homes, protect our kids, and just in consideration, no cars up on our area, no cars. It's tiny enough as it is. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
You said no cars?
Well, no cars.
Car, that's okay. I just, what you're saying.
Or a truck.
No,
I got you. I've been here all night.
You know who you're speaking to. Thank you.
Okay, looks like Tim's pulled up the clarification for us.
Yes. All right. So here you see the original with the proposed amendments. And the original text states this specific address, 2058 North. And we looked at the development agreement map and exhibit, and it was the wrought iron, if I'm saying that correctly, building, which says that all of the CP1 uses are allowed except for these listed. And so restaurant was precluded or not allowed, and fast food eating establishment. So the applicant's proposing to remove that restaurant from the list. The fast food eating establishment could also be removed.
Yeah, I understood that part. It's the drive-in window that we keep saying is not allowed. I couldn't see where that was.
The drive-in window that's not allowed?
Yeah, the drive-in part of it.
That would be the fast food eating.
Yeah, I can see that point because that's what I've been looking at all night.
Yeah. And the drive-through is part of the fast food.
Okay.
The fast food or restaurant is allowed to have drive-through.
Okay.
But this building currently does not have a drive-through.
So
correct?
that same paragraph, then if we're just going to rezone them both to CP1s, then shouldn't that either eliminate the zone pad completely and just say the CP1 zone area is limited to the following?
Well, so it states...
Just take out the pad located at. You took out the address, but I don't see why you need the pad located there.
Oh, right, the pad, correct.
So
that's correct. That's
yeah. So if it's
fine.
under the fast food in the restaurant, I can understand that.
Mm-hmm.
That's not a problem.
Okay, that's a good find. Thank
you. Getting rid of the drive-through.
Anybody?
They're leaving that strike out there.
We should take any action here? Or,
Madam Mayor, I have a
excuse me.
question,
Sure.
clarification. Is the desire to accommodate a drive-through or to not accommodate the drive-through?
I don't have a
Canes?
problem accommodating it.
For Canes,
Yes.
I'm fine with it as long as there's a limit to how late they can be open at night. But like I said, the inside of the restaurant can stay open. I don't really care, but I think the outside that close that, some respect to the neighbors. Because you can have sound walls all you want, but when it's quiet at night, sound travels, and so.
Yeah, I think just a point that Councilmember Bloxham, it's related, but not directly, made earlier some time ago with regard to restaurants, is we were talking with a very prominent broker not too long ago that was talking about how the pandemic has changed restaurants and retail in general. And what he essentially said is that there is nobody. Many of the restaurants who didn't have drive-throughs prior to the pandemic are no longer in existence. And restaurants that before would have never considered wanting a drive-through now will require a drive-through, or they will not come to your community because they came through a near-death experience. And so I think this is the new reality that Councilmember Bloxham was referring to, is that restaurants don't ever want to get, business owners like this gentleman don't ever want to get in a situation where their options are limited when something unforeseeable happens. And so even in our downtown area and areas where we would have never considered somebody wanting a drive-through, and it's not for fast food restaurants, it's actually for more traditional restaurants that have never required them, they're now saying, we want to accommodate it, or we're not interested in coming. We'll go to a community that will allow those. So it's a real thing.
So I think what Councilman Day requested works, which is just says a CP1 zone pad located at, and we take out the location, but located in the development area shall be limited to land uses allowed in the CP1 zoning district, except that the following shall not be allowed. And we take out fast food eating, which is the drive-through, exception, right? The prohibition, and then you take out the restaurant prohibition too, and then that would allow anywhere within that CP1 area there, and also down below, it would allow exactly what you're talking about. Would allow the drive-through and a restaurant. So that works.
That works?
That works. If that's what you choose to do, that works.
I was going to say, is anybody willing to make that motion? Do you want to?
Can you make the motion for us and we'll just say what he said?
Oh, I think you're doing a great job. Really. All of you together come up with a perfect, it really is good. This is a hard one.
This has turned
it's
into
not
a hard
easy.
One, but for the right reasons. So.
Yeah, even when we were reading through it, I thought, it's a little confusing. So the amendment would be to take out the reference to the hotel and all the language regarding the hotel out of the development agreement, and then to leave the other amendments in the development agreement exactly the same as what they are.
I'll give it a shot.
Okay.
If you'll help me, which ordinance is which?
Okay.
Because I don't know which
Get my sheet out here.
16 is and 2117.
Okay.
17 was the hotel.
So resolution 2130 is what?
2130 is the
Canes.
I think that's the Raising Canes.
That one's Canes.
Let's call it the Raising
So that's
Canes
the rezone
resolution.
for the CP on the bottom.
Yes. Uh-huh.
Okay, so I would make the motion that we accept resolution 2130, accepting the rezone on the bottom part.
No,
That would be an ordinance. A rezone would be an ordinance.
Right.
But doesn't that also include the hotel?
We're going to do the resolution first, if that's okay.
The resolution is the development agreement then, right?
That's the development agreement.
Okay, so I'll make the motion that we accept resolution 2130, except taking the hotel part out, but on the CP1 part, we are now allowing fast food establishments and the restaurants
That's
on the
correct.
CP1 zone.
That's
But on the hotel, that stays in.
That's good. The hotel is out, right?
Well, so the hotel is still in the agreement as it is.
Yes. Still prohibited.
Still excluded.
Yeah, that's correct. And then there's an ordinance that goes along with that, which would change the zoning.
Okay, can we do one at a time?
Yes. Let's do the
Okay, we did
resolution 2130 first.
So what?
Do you want to close the public
What are we doing?
And close the public
close the
hearing
public
as well.
Well, do we need to close the public hearing? Well, can't we do that after we do the ordinances, or do we?
You can do it whatever way you like, as long as you close the public hearing before you pass the ordinance.
Okay, well, we'll go ahead and close it now.
Okay.
Second.
All right. Thank you.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded.
The hearing's closed.
The hearing is now closed, and I'll take a roll.
We don't need to.
What's the motion?
Just that the hearing was closed.
Just that the hearing is closed, but didn't Councilman Day just make a motion that we adopt resolution 21-30?
Yes, with the
those
changes that he
modifications.
indicated.
Yeah, with the changes. So that's what you will be voting on right now.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. So I will do a roll call vote, and I'll make it simple. I'll start with Councilmember Day.
Yes.
Foxham.
Aye.
Fitzpatrick.
Aye.
Morris.
I just want to, we didn't get a chance to, I guess, talk about this, but just want to say that some progress was made tonight with this, that the applicants come in and they get hours to figure these things out, and the architects are working on things, and Tim is working on this for hours and hours, and we appreciate him. And then we get 25 minutes to to look at this and then vote. Luckily, we get a packet before and we're able to study this, but your involvement in this has been important. I would say, I know the hotel is off the table tonight for what we're talking about today, but I would say that the applicant that, as far as public outreach, I think you've heard from the public, and so I'm not sure what more public outreach you could have, at least for the hotel portion. As far as the restaurant goes in this motion, I'm going to vote aye.
Councilman Day, or Thomas?
Aye.
Okay, thank you. So that motion passes unanimously. So now we need to deal with the ordinance.
Okay, so I'll go ahead on that one. So which parcel, Tim, is 0004? That's 2116. Is that the long, narrow one or the bottom one? It shows it on the map, I think.
Yep, let's go to the map.
Yeah.
1.15 acres is the south parcel, 649 west.
Well, that's 16.
That's 2116.
Okay, so I will make the motion that we accept the rezone on ordinance 2116, which is that south parcel, from BRP to CP1.
And close the public hearing. Right?
And close it. I have to do that again?
Okay.
Okay, and close the public hearing.
Sorry.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, it's been moved in second. Is there any discussion on this one? Okay, thank you. With that, I'll go ahead and go with the roll call vote, and I'll start at the opposite end there with Mr. Thomas.
Aye.
Mr. Morris?
Aye.
Ms. Patrick?
Aye.
Mr. Boxam?
Aye.
Mr. Day?
Yes.
Okay, there you have it. It passes unanimously.
So question now, Gary, where the other one has been pulled off, do we need to do anything on that one?
No, let's leave that alone, because if you were to deny the other one, it would be a year before you could come back. The other zoning ordinance, it would be a year before they could come back, and who knows what's going to happen. They may come in with a different configuration or a different use or something else, and you may not want to.
Just a point of information. It's the applicant's, they have the right to withdraw it all the way up until there is a motion to vote on it.
So here's an interesting difference between the ordinance and the resolution. Resolution is passing an agreement between the two of you. And if one of you withdraws from one side of the agreement, you don't have an agreement anymore. But on the zoning ordinance, you have a right as a city council to continue forward with the zoning if you wanted to, because that's a legislative act. It's not an agreement with the applicant. You can consider that the applicant came in and requested that you withdrew a zoning application, but you don't have to. You're not forced to take that. You can continue forward. You could even zone it something different if you wanted to, because you have that power to do that. So that's the difference between an ordinance, an applicant coming in and saying, I want to withdraw my zoning application. You may consider that, but it's your decision as to whether or not you do it. If they withdraw something from an agreement, then that kills the agreement pretty much, or that part of the agreement. So,
But by withdrawing from the agreement, basically made the necessary ordinance irrelevant at that point then.
That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah, that's.
So if we were to proceed with 2017 and deny the rezone request, you say that then ties the land up for a year for anything else?
For a vote on the same zone.
Zone.
Right.
Okay.
So they may come in with something.
The concern is CP1 isn't necessarily a bad zone. It's what they want to do with it.
Correct.
So, okay,
Yeah,
I got it.
You're exactly right. And so really they could come in with a change to the development agreement, a different change to the development agreement if they had a different use, and the CP1 would be perfectly legitimate. So.
But the question is, do we need to do anything on it?
No. No.
Okay.
By just leaving it, it doesn't deny it, it doesn't approve it. You're good.
What happens to the sliver? Is it gone?
Okay.
It's just no decision was made on it, and so they can actually come back and
So it's still BRP?
It's still BRP. It remains the same. That's what it was.
Okay, is there a need to close that public hearing?
No, you're good.
Okay.
You're getting in the swing of things here.
He's just waking us back up. No, thank you.
I hope
Okay.
that helps. It was a confusing one, so I
No,
apologize
and
to
that's why we have you with us, so that you can help us here.
to make
So
it more confusing.
clarify.
Thanks.
Okay, thank you. And I want to say thanks to everyone and their patience here regarding the matter. We can now move on to item number D of our public hearing, which Mr. Probert finally gets to come up to the podium and present and talk about our adopted budget.
I thought everybody was here for me, and now they're leaving.
I think it's personal.
We can probably move forward, can we?
Yeah, yes, go ahead and continue.
So, Mayor, members of the council, tonight we have ordinance 21-18 to amend the budget for fiscal year 2020-2021. Attached to your packet, there was a list of amendments to finalize the budget for the year. Just to briefly summarize that, the general fund is proposed to be amended $574,163.86. $127,000, a little more than $127,000, is an appropriation of fund balance, mostly related to CARES Act allocations and some carryover program funding, as well as enhancement of antivirus software in the IT department. We had revenue that we could not provide a preliminary estimate at the beginning of the budget year of $328,000, a little more than that. That's mostly related to wildland fire, police special services, fire academy revenue donations, and a few other small fees. And then we had grants of a little more than $118,000 that we did not have preliminary estimates for. Those were in Internet Crimes Against Children, the National Highway Transportation Safety Grants, state Homeland Security grants, bulletproof vest grants. There were some other areas of the budget outside the general fund. I think I would, at this point, would just open it up to if there are any questions about any of the amendments that were being proposed.
Council, do you have any questions?
In addition to the list of amendments, I had two amendments that came in at the first of this week that didn't make it onto the list, so I feel like I need to explain those. One was, we talked about it last week, the parks budget for water for next year's budget, but as we've reviewed closer and closer to the end of this year, we felt it necessary to bring an amendment for $150,000 use of general fund balance to shore up that account. Even though we're only 2 weeks away, we won't get the final bill until July for those services. So it was running about $100,000 over budget, and it'll end up being about $150,000, I believe. And the second item, there's some more on the list related to this, but the fire department goes out on wildland fires and they get reimbursed from other states for that. And they received a check on Monday for $14,494. And so it's proposed to move those funds into their capital equipment replacement account in the CIP fund. I don't know if there's any questions about those two items.
Any questions?
Okay. If there aren't any questions, then I would propose that you open a public hearing related to these amendments. And then if there's no comments, that we adopt, sorry, I forgot, ordinance 21-18.
Madam Mayor, I move that we open the public hearing and adopt ordinance 21-18, amending the budget for fiscal year 2021.
Public hearing is now open. Would anyone care to stand up to the mic and state your name and address? Seeing that we have no one here. Yeah. Mr. Crane, is there anything online?
Let me go back to, not since the end of the last public hearing. So
okay.
You're in good shape.
All right, thank you. Council, do you have any questions or want to deliberate on it? Okay, then I'll look for a motion to close the public hearing and take action.
Let's close the public hearing and take action.
Is that your
on, I guess you want to have something.
Ordinance.
On ordinance 21-18.
Okay, thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. The public hearing is now closed. I'll take a roll call vote regarding ordinance 21-18. Mr. Bloxham.
Aye.
Mr. Thomas.
Yeah.
Mr. Day.
Yes.
Mr. Morris.
Aye.
Ms. Fitzpatrick.
Aye.
Okay. Passes unanimously. Thank you. We will now move on to our last item under our public hearing, which is item number E, which is adopt the tentative budget. So again, Tracy,
Okay.
go ahead and present.
We have ordinance 21-12 to adopt the tentative budget, the proposed tax rate, and the schedule of compensation for elective, statutory, and appointed officers. Just a couple of things about this. We talked last week in the public hearing about the changes to the tentative budget, and we did have one thing that had changed, and I mentioned it last week, but that was related to the fire station contract. And so in the 2022 budget, it is proposed to add $687,250 to what's already been budgeted for the construction of that station so that we can meet the level required by the contract that was approved in that budget. It's proposed that 248,000, a little more than 248,000 of that come from impact fees, public safety impact fees. We're allowed to bring that up to a certain percentage of the total contract. A little over 238,000 of that additional funding from the general fund and 200,000 of that additional funding from the emergency medical services fund. So we'll have those three funding sources making up the 687,000 addition to the, and that amount includes the furniture, fixtures, and equipment that they estimate they'll need to furnish the place as well. So it's a little above the $4.1 million contract that was approved. I believe we've covered everything else. The main thing for the record would be the proposed tax increase. So as part of the motion, you'll set a public hearing for August 5th so that we can address the truth in taxation related to the tax increase, and that's related to paramedic services. We've discussed openly, and we're preparing a flyer for the next utility bill as requested that will educate the public about the fact that the county has dropped their rate and they are not funding paramedic services anymore, and that the cities within the county are picking up that rate. As far as Layton citizens are concerned, that should be a net zero effect on their taxes. The county rate will come off and the city will pick up that exact same rate. That's a decision that was made, recommended by staff and made by you as a council to fund it at that level. The current level of funding we're receiving is actually more than that, and we could have chosen to raise that rate even more, but felt that it was appropriate to keep everyone even. So with that, this is also a public hearing, so I would recommend we open a public hearing related to the 2022 budget. And if there are no comments, adopt ordinance 21-12.
Who wants to make that motion?
Make a motion that we open the public hearing.
Thank you. This is a public hearing. We have 0 comments online, and we have 1 person in the audience.
Looks like 2.
2, excuse me, the cameraman. The other one is our
Just for
planning
giggles, do you have an
commissioner's chair.
amount for the budget? What's the total?
The total for the budget is just over $109 million for all funds.
Okay. Anybody else have any questions? We'll look for a motion to close the public hearing and take action regarding ordinance 21-12, including the August 5th truth and taxation date.
Madam Mayor, I make a motion that we close this public hearing and that we adopt ordinance 21-12, adopting the proposed budget and proposed property tax rate for fiscal year 21-22 and the compensation schedule for elected, statutory, and appointed officers for the same fiscal year and set a public hearing for the proposed property tax increase for August 5th, 2021 at 7 p.m. here in the City Council chambers.
I'll second it.
Okay, it's been moved in second. I'll take a roll call vote on that. Councilman Day?
Yes.
Councilman Bloxham?
Aye.
Councilman Fitzpatrick? Aye. Councilman Morris?
Aye.
Councilman Thomas?
Aye.
Don't give me that one. Okay, it's unanimous that item number E passed as well. Okay, that brings our public hearing portion to a close. And I could entertain a motion unless any of you have any unfinished business.
I would like to address an issue on the unfinished business, and that is the parking along 2200 West by Ellison Park. That soccer tournament that was held just recently was a nightmare. We had people illegally parking, buses parking in the red zones, parking on the south side of Hill Field where it's not allowed. They were parking in the fields by there and everything. And they were spilled at least 3 blocks into the subdivision to the west. People crossing back and forth against the street, no lights, nothing. I think we need to address the issue. And I know the comment was made that, well, it's bringing business to our city. Well, that's fine, but I don't think we should be allowing illegal activity because there's laws set up, for traffic enforcement, and they continue to break them. I had a thought hit my mind that if these larger conferences, and maybe Parks and Rec could kind of help figure out where the number is on that as part of the tournament that comes, that they need to provide an off-duty officer to provide on-site traffic enforcement. And they pay for it as part of their tournament fees to utilize that park. And it wouldn't necessarily be all of them, but ones that bring school buses. There was Alpine School District, Wasatch School District, Ogden School District. They were from all over. This was a huge tournament and was a huge impact to the residents that live in the area that we had just talked about a few weeks ago. I've sent pictures to several of you showing the parking. I did talk to an officer. He did get out and move the bus. A couple hours later, I went back down that same street, and the whole south side, all the way, the whole length on that south side of Ellison Park, plus west of 2200 in the field, people were parking. And so obviously this tournament was too large for this park. And when we have a business come to town, we have to make sure that they ensure that there's enough parking. And if this tournament if we don't have enough parking for these tournaments, then maybe we shouldn't have them. But I think at a minimum that they need to be able to provide some mechanism for this parking to be enforced to make it safe for our residents that are driving up and down the street.
I will comment, Saturday, I spent 4 times going up, back, into town. And all 4 times I came through the park, there were policemen ticketing. They had a, tow truck hauling away a cowboy truck and trailer. I mean, they were doing things, but every time they move them, they just fill right back in.
Well, and that's my thought process is if these tournaments want to do it and that they need to pay to have somebody not currently on patrol needed elsewhere in our city.
No, I just want it, just to know
You have a very valid point. And I
there
think
was people there. I mean, he was doing a good job. He just, the minute you turn your back, I noticed when they bought the haul the trailer away, all kinds of people started running over to move their cars. So maybe that's what we ought to do, is just put a trailer down there to pull them away, put them over there in that farmer's field down there. That'd be okay. Ain't growing nothing. It ain't got no water.
I think Alex wants to comment.
Yeah,
Alex?
I was just going to say, related to that, staff doesn't disagree, obviously. The tournament was actually sponsored by Weber State University. It was a 7-on-7 football tournament that is very popular. We're one of the few locations that have enough capacity to accommodate that. Parks and Rec staff had sat down with Weber State and felt like they had an understanding with regard to where buses in particular were going to park, and actually had signage up, as I understand it, directing them to park on the east side of the park in the gravel area or in the overflow parking lot from the elementary. And they, in talking with Dave that day and after the fact, even Weber State was overwhelmed by the turnout that they had. The numbers in this tournament this year, I don't think we had it last year, far exceeded what they anticipated. And they acknowledged that it was a mess. We acknowledged it was a mess. We did call the officers, as was mentioned. There were 2 citations written, 35 warnings were written, and a whole bunch of people were called based on their plate numbers and asked to move their cars. Most of them were not happy, obviously, about being contacted. When Dave went out there on Saturday afternoon and looked at it himself, what he indicated to me, I didn't see it myself, but he indicated that he went to the east side of the park, where the gravel parking is, and the parking south of Ellison Elementary, and counted 100+ stalls that were not utilized. And it's the same challenge we've had before with people wanting to park possibly as close as they can, even if they're parking illegally. To Don's point, which we agree with, when I talked to Dave the first of the week as a follow-up to this, one of the things we specifically talked about was that idea that we know from experience, certainly know now from this experience, but even experience in the past, that there are a few tournaments a year, a few events a year that have the potential to become really, really problematic. There's the ongoing day-to-day things we got to work to manage as well. But some of these we need to take a more formal approach and maybe have them run through more of a special event permit where we're sitting down with them, with the organizer, we're planning, we're requiring traffic enforcement, we're going to identify places that are not going to be able to be parked, and we put up barricades or tape or something to not be in a position where people who weren't part of the organization, family members show up and are parking in red zones and so forth. And so we agree with all of that. And I asked them to make a list of those types of uses and then to begin to put in place a more formal process for these. These typically happen only a few times a year. This scale, we do have, again, the weekly things that do create issues, but not near the level of this. And we want, Weber State loves to come here. The kids and the teams have a great experience here because it's all in one location. It's very close to services, and there is an economic benefit, but we agree completely. That doesn't condone or excuse in any way people parking. I mean, buses, for heaven's sakes. Bus drivers would park in red. That is staggering to think they would even do that. But anyway, so we think we have a pretty good plan, and Dave was here and prepared to speak to it tonight, but I think he left. But we can certainly bring that back. And
Lucky Dave.
The other Dave. But
well, thank you. It's just that I, like Dave, travel up and down that street constantly. And multiple times I had to stop as people were crossing the street with small children, not holding hands. And then, like I said, parking in the fields. And I was just amazed at the amount of cars that were present. And I did also drive up by Ellison, and there were some people parked and some overflowed into the school. But they should have a good handle on the number of teams that have registered and have a good thought on history about how many, you've got your player, and then you've got at least, like I think was mentioned tonight, we're not the usual mom and dad show up. It's mom and dad and 2 or 3 sets of grandparents. So how many cars are we looking at? And kind of set a limit that when the enrollment reaches this amount, then this automatically has to occur.
I don't think they had any more teams than they normally have. It was just, I really think it's like people want to get out, but this was beyond what it's ever been. We've always had some issues, but this was packed. And I was, and I felt sorry for the officer. I wish I knew his name because he was sweating.
Again, it's not an offset, but in talking with Dave, the coaches and the teams said the kids had a great experience. They love coming here. They love the services. They love the access. So we want we think from staff that we just need to work better and harder because we want that economic impact. We want people to look at Layton as a destination. We just need to work with the organizers and be more formal about that approach to minimize the issues. But it's great that people want to come here as opposed to stay away from us.
I think the takeaway here is we've learned off of this one, and we know going forward for this year.
It won't happen next time.
It won't happen. We'll be able to put up signs and control it.
So just, the fact that we're drawing those kind of groups, there's really nothing out there except unless you go up to Sam's or, Burger King or whatever to eat. Is our concession area there large enough to provide services for that type of thing?
Well,
no.
Yeah, I was going to say, I don't think to that scale, in an efficient way, but
they do well.
Well,
they
she
provide
has
services, yeah.
She's got in the concession area, no, but she's got at least one, I think, two other trailers that they bring in.
Oh, they do. Good.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so, she does, let me tell you what, this Nash lady does a
good,
fantastic job.
May?
Sure.
Alex, my concern on Saturday was obviously the people parking on the south side of Ellison. Even the soccer tournaments understand that you don't park. We lived in Ellison for 8 years while my son was playing comp soccer, and everybody understood that. And so this discussion is helpful for that. One of the other main concerns I had, the main concern was people parking in front of the fire station. Should we have, keep clear, or I just could not understand why you would park in front of the fire station, or why the fire department wasn't upset that people were parking in front of the station.
Well, we talked about this before.
Yeah.
There's no red. There's no.
No, it is red.
No, it's
a field.
We're talking about
on the east side of the street.
No,
on the west side. They parked all the way down
the west
almost to the intersection.
West side of 23.
Yeah.
Right.
I'm sorry.
Right.
So it's just field.
No, I understand. But Clearview coming out, their Clearview, which they have to maintain, is a turning radius coming in and out. So typically the cars on the other side of the street aren't going to block that. That's why it's not red.
Oh,
we can red.
Oh, wow.
But when the fire station went in, that was what they thought was needed. But
wow.
I think they're two separate issues. But I understand what you're saying. Now, I was thinking you were talking about on the west side, on the east side, excuse me, where people are coming out.
No, it's the west side.
Yeah.
And they park right up to where it turns into a second lane to turn.
Yeah, and I think what we're proposing with the other issue, the striping, we're going to put additional red based on what we talked before. We're going to do the continuous left turn lane and change the speed limits. I think that's one of the areas that we're looking at carrying that red, so they're not pulling clear down to the intersection.
Yeah, and that's, even a sign.
Pulling out forward with those trucks, but backing those trucks in is.
Well, they don't back them in. That's the point.
They pull around.
That's why they have a circular drive.
Yeah.
But that's one of those things where, again, if we're planning better, all of us, the applicant and the city staff, then we can put barricades or tape across that and make sure nobody parks there, because you don't have the ability to and alleviate that. Now, they are going to spill into the neighborhoods. Those are public streets, and
you're not going to stop.
We're going to have issues there, but.
Well, except they were parked in front of every single mailbox down that road for how long? And the mail had not been delivered when I was down there. So, okay.
Not to keep everyone longer, but I'm curious, are we wanting to do anything with our water usage with the continuing drought? We talked about it kind of in a informal setting when the emergency went out. But it's been a long time and nothing's changed. So I know there are other municipalities that are doing it, and I'm not doing it because of them. I'm just thinking it might be the right thing to do. So do we go to a next phase, a next contingency? Or what does the staff think about that?
Yeah, in fact, the mayor and I spoke about this today, and I actually was going to say something in the work meeting. We ran out of time, so I didn't mention it, but you probably saw it. But River Basin put out a flyer recently, and it's similar to what Governor Cox has talked about, of water restrictions that are being imposed. And they've reached out to us, and staff agrees with it and would suggest we do it, to send out a notice under our name and under our logo, identifying that these water restrictions are being adopted by the city or have been adopted by the city to put into place. And what they essentially cover is no more than 2 waterings per week. And then there's guidance about what that watering means. It's 20 minutes if you're using an overhead spray pattern, or 40 minutes if you're using a rotor. No watering, outdoor watering between the hours of 10 a.m. and 6 p.m. Again, we realize that's an evolving thing. And then to delay installation of any new landscape projects, which is going to require additional water. up front. We had a discussion yesterday, I guess it was, internally with staff, and there's a growing concern that these extinguishment of the water dates, if I can say it that way, are going to be creeping forward. You know, a lot of the companies we were basically talking about October 1, and there's even some discussion that some of the irrigation companies up north are looking even to September, and some even the end of August. So one of the concerns we had, as we talked about it this morning, is if any of our local companies end up in that situation, and it's early in the year, then what many people will look to do is to replace that demand they can't get on the secondary side to our culinary side, which adds a pretty scary potential in some regards, not just with the amount of water, but with people trying to make cross connections and connect their sprinkling systems to culinary, which provide contamination potential. So we're on top of that. I mean, our engineering people are really concerned about that. But what we propose is that we send out, we wanted to prepare and send out with the next billing, the water meter or the utility billing, our own version of this. And then also the state has a website, and we've been gathering information ourselves where people can report people they think are not using the water wisely. And so we've been getting those reports. We've had about 85 complaints to this point. I asked them this morning to try to go through and to categorize that between institutions, businesses, residences. We have addresses. We don't have names, obviously. And then maybe depending on if we have some repeat customers, is to do some individual outreach from the city, either by letter or personal contact, letting particularly the institutions, some of which should be very sensitive to this, they're churches and prominent businesses and so forth, to try to have rather than just a general outreach, to pair that with a personal outreach to say there's a problem here. Can you work with us? And then we also talked. Again, we're not suggesting it, but ask them to brainstorm some other approaches or what other communities are doing in the face of the drought. Some cities are considering a drought tier structure. We have a conservation tier structure in our rates. Some cities, I don't know if anybody's adopted it, but some cities are actually looking at adding something that would apply in a drought that would significantly increase the basic rate you have as a way to try to force people or encourage people to not pay that. Again, we're not suggesting that. We're trying to do some research, but we do believe that it's an issue that time's of the essence. It's getting more dire, and what at least our staff was saying today is in their discussions with the irrigation companies in Weber Basin is that some of the earlier suggestions and invitations have not borne the savings that they hope they would. The other thing we're doing internally, I asked, talking to Dave, we talked about it this morning, but I'm going to follow up with Dave individually, is to re-examine again what we're doing in the parks and to really focus on our water usage in all the parks, but to place an emphasis on trying to maintain for safety and other reasons our playable fields, but any of our space that is more recreational in nature, right? To cut back on that and to just confirm again what we're doing and how we're doing it and why we're doing it.
And put up signs too, so our residents know that we're taking action. And then what about the landscape out at the new park?
Yeah, and one of the other questions we thought about, again, it's not necessarily a suggestion, I don't know how it'll work, but we're in the process of working to build a park, Harmony Park. We're suggesting, as we talked about tonight, encouraging people not to lay new sod. Now, it may be that when we're ready to do that, it'll be after the into the fall and next year. But we think from a staff level, ought to do the analysis, then make a recommendation to you guys about whether we intentionally delay putting that sod in because it's going to have to be watered. Yeah. Unless we can just delay it till next spring, do the other improvements. So all those things are on the table because the urgency seems to be increasing, and the things that have been tried are just not effective.
I think this announcement here that you have, though, I'd like to see us get that published tomorrow on social media. I get the fact that it'll go out in the water bills, but I think social media wise, the staff can go ahead and put that up, and then all of us can take it and share it. I think that's the way we kind of help it.
A couple comments on that, and then I have one last item of business.
Yeah, I know.
It's not just Weber Basin that has put those out. Case Creek's put one out. Davis Weber Canal's put one out. They've all put one out. So they all service parts of the city. So, and I know Syracuse Public Works guy, engineer, was on TV, and he specifically outlined the dangers of the cross connections. That might be something that you want to include in there and really warn people not to do that either.
Yeah.
Because that they brought that out.
And then one of the other, somebody had brought this up to me is do we need to figure out where the fine line is with code enforcement? I mean, weeds are weeds and they shouldn't be allowed to grow. But if people have allowed, their yard to die, or, along the parkway, and I think it's in the city's part of the parkway, there's a whole bunch of dead trees. You don't want to enforce replacing dead trees right now because it's not the appropriate time to do it. So I think we need to be real careful about what we enforce when it relates to that too, because, like I said, weeds are weeds. And they actually need to be cut down.
Yeah, but enforcement's an important part of it, because in the past, all there's been is hands, a little slap on the wrist. That's all you get. I know Syracuse has hired one person specifically for enforcement on the water issues. I'm not saying we need to do that, but times have to change where there actually is a penalty if you're a violator.
I mean, we know that the ultimate penalty is the rates.
Or your water gets shut
So
off.
how serious are those other municipalities about potentially implementing that drought structure?
I don't know, council member. I could find out. That was just one of the things that Steve mentioned today that he'd heard or understood some cities were considering, but that's why I asked him to get the details and
Well, and I think like Weber Basin on the secondary, and I don't mean to keep saying Weber Basin, but that's ones we've kind of talked to, is they're actually going to take pretty serious action.
No, their enforcements are stepped up, all of them.
They have, and they're actually going to turn people's water off if they get more than 2 complaints on them.
Yeah, and the challenge we have, of course,
we can't.
is we have culinary is we want to turn people's house water off because they're watering their lawns too much. So that's the thing that secondaries don't have to deal with. But to Tom's point, Councilmember Days, we do want, again, another point we actually talked to Rick after we were walking out of the earlier meeting is there needs to be a unified voice. We need to be working with Case Creek and Davis Weber Canal and with Weber Basin and Holmes Creek and anybody that provides services so that people aren't hearing one thing from Layton City and one thing from them. And so that's an important thing we wanted to try to all get on the same page. So in Layton, you're hearing a common voice, common expectation, and we're all working to support each other.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, so I'll keep you here just a couple more minutes. Alex, I've had a couple of complaints recently, animal control. I didn't know it. It had never been discussed here, but they're refusing to euthanize any trapped animals now. So if you catch a raccoon or skunk, whatever else, they're calling them, as in the past, to say, come take care of it, and they're saying we don't do that anymore.
Yeah.
So that kind of limits options for people to take care of that stuff. Yeah, well, I talked to Commissioner, I won't say who, he says, well, just take your 22 out and shoot them. Well, I'm like, then I might do that, but somebody else might. And then, I might get decided for shooting in the city or whatever. So what are the options for people?
Basically, there's what you identified, and that's the county. That was a county decision. And they informed us of it. It's been several months ago, but informed us. We found out because people started contacting us indicating that they'd called and they weren't providing the service anyway. We from the staff side, at least, we understand why they're not doing it.
But we were paying $25 a call or whatever.
Yeah, we don't pay that. They drop that charge.
Well, because they're not doing nothing for it.
Right. So what they've suggested is you've got private companies that do it. They're more expensive than the 25. They were heavily subsidizing that, and so what they've been telling people, as I understand it, is we encourage you to deal with it yourself if you have the capacity and the environment's right to do it. They can't tell you shoot them yourself, but if you have, I know there's a gentleman up east that lives south of Antelope Drive that doesn't shoot them, but has a way of taking care of them, if you will. That he's worked out over the years because he has 10, 12 a month raccoons that he's having in his yard. And it's not a safety issue to anybody else around. But that's what the county's done. They're not interested in getting back in that business.
So is that something that we should advise the residents of? Because it's a little late when you got an animal out in the trap to realize they don't come anymore.
Well, I think I don't know that we've put out anything specifically, but I think my understanding is, and recollection is, that's not very definitive, but just from a memory from months and months and months ago, is that the county has put that information out, tried to put it out on multiple occasions, that they're not providing that service anymore.
Yeah, and I had never heard it, and neither had any of these people. Yeah. So it obviously didn't get out very well or whatever.
Oh, it was. It was being used. Yeah, I know it was.
What?
Well, I made 7 calls myself.
Really?
Yes.
What?
As far as the service to come in and euthanize I had skunks and I had raccoons both.
Well, and then I had one guy that was surprised when they brought all his cats back. After they caught all his cats and took them away, and then they brought them back a few days later all fixed, and he didn't want them back. But
Yeah, that's part of their plan.
yeah, I know that's their plan, but people don't understand these plans.
Community cat program is
Yeah.
Yeah.
I say both is better.
Any other discussion you guys want to?
No, I make the motion we go home if nobody else has anything else.
Okay.
I second it.
I agree. Thank you, you guys. Thanks for staying so late and hearing everybody out. I think, it ended up being a good meeting.
Yeah, $25 a month.